Good afternoon. Let's get started. September 20th, 2023. Time is going by fast. Time is 4:03 p.m., 4:02 p.m. Board members in attendance, Director Bankus, Director Nelson, Director Jurgensen, Director Malpackham, Director Art. Director Daniels is attending a CASP conference and is excused. Director Loma has got some personal family issues and he's contending with and he's excused. Superintendent Gall is out of town, personal time off. Deputy Superintendent Tamra Acevedo is joining us remotely. Is she on remotely? Okay, she will be joining us at some point in time remotely. We also have several executive cabinet members in attendance, including area superintendents. With that, the first item on the agenda are the school improvement plans, and they are being presented by the area. And the first one is the Southeast Region. Area Superintendent Sherry Callback will be the lead. And thank you all for being here, principals and some of the school staff too. And before I turn it over to Ms. Callback, the good. Last year at this time, we had 15 schools that were priority improvement or turnaround schools. And we also were tracking 2 other schools that were close to priority improvement or turnaround. So any number that you want to take, 15, 17, that number has been reduced to 8. So we got several of the schools off the state watch list. And even the schools that are presenting today, priority improvement and turnaround schools, are trending in the right direction. You are maybe a little push away from getting into that bright side. I guess they say it's darkest before the dawn, so maybe you are right there. But to get to that other side, the work has already started. In May, you had that one plan symposium where you started looking at your internal school data, and then when the CMAS data, you were able to get that. When that dropped in August, you were able to go back and tweak some of your school improvement plans, and this has also been presented to the DAC accreditation committee, and here you are in front of us. But past experiences tell me that these are some of the most difficult and challenging conversations that we have in this room. As building leaders and staff members, the last thing you want to do is to be in a public meeting and talk about your school performance and where you fell short. And all of you have invested a significant amount of time and energy. More importantly, I think you put your heart and soul into this. So when the outcomes are not there to match that effort that you put in there, it is deflating. We'll get there. So when success and accolades come the way of a school, they are always shared and distributed. It's due to the collective effort of all our staff. But when we find ourselves in this sphere, the accountability stops with us. You know, it's usually the people that are in this room that are accountable to the public and have to answer where we fell short. That's what we are here for, to analyze what is it that we can do collectively as a school district to progress in the right direction. It is sobering when you look at the data. Data doesn't tell the whole story, but data is data and data doesn't lie. And when you look at the data and it shows that 70 to 80% of our students are not at grade level proficient or struggling in reading, writing, and math, that is truly heartbreaking. It's not acceptable and has to change. And as we go through this evening and engage in this conversation and discussion, the feedback you hear from the board and from the DAC, it's all of us collectively leaning in to help support and to help get us to a place where next year that 8 is being reduced to 0 if we can. And if we can get that to 0, that would be great. So this is not meant to be judgmental. It is purely to come into a sphere where we can all exchange collective information and progress in that way. And hopefully it's taken in that manner. So with that, I will turn it to you, Ms. Callback. Audubon is the first school that's on the list. You set up the conversation and hand it over to Principal Ford.
Thank you. Thank you, President Malpackham and board members, for giving us this time this evening. From the Southeast region tonight, you'll hear from 2 schools. Audubon Elementary is one, Swigert Middle School is the other. And President Malpacum, to your point, while both of these schools did make forward progress within a performance band this year, neither of them reached the level of the next performance band. They are each 9/10 of a point away from improvement on the state's SPF. And so, not specific to these two schools, but with all schools, as their USIPs were developed for this year, we really worked starting back last May and continuing through the work in August and September of this year to ensure that their USIPs and their major improvement strategies were focused at the systems level. And so in these presentations, you probably won't hear about a third grade teacher or a fifth grade team or a small particular group of students. You will instead hear about the systems that these school leaders and their teams are putting in place to change outcomes for students in their buildings. Because also, to your point, we are not satisfied with these results either. We do need to absolutely improve our outcomes for students. And so with that said, I am going to turn it over to Audubon Elementary. Erin Ford is here. I do want to introduce Krista and Marty. Krista is our behavior specialist and Marty is our TLC at Audubon, and great members of Erin's leadership team helping him to develop those systems. My area instructional coach, Treg, is also here this evening. She spends significant time not only with these two schools, but across the region supporting the development of their systems as well. And so Erin, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for the opportunity tonight. I think I wish I wasn't here. I wish we were in a better place, but we are. And so we're going to take it where we are and move forward. As Sherry said, we missed it by 0.9 points. The work we planned starting in May before we got our SPF and before we started moving forward adjusted slightly once we got our SPF, but we already knew the work that we needed to do this year. And so when we talked about systems and the things that we were going to put in place, regardless of where we ended up last year, we weren't going to be satisfied with that being our 1 year Band-Aid or fix. We knew that we needed to take action on a few specific systems and really do that work. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about where we were, but more about where we're going and what we've already done. So with that, just a little bit about our school. We are a neighborhood school. We've seen an increased population in the last handful of years, slightly down this year as far as where we were projected to be. But students have the opportunity to participate in a bunch of clubs and activities and just become better citizens in our school. We've been able to get our before and after school or our after school enrichment program up and running. Good thing, we're full. We have 54 students in it already. We have a wait list of 10 right now. So just some different opportunities that we've been presented the last couple of years. We've added a full day pre-K program at Audubon. So that started in February. So we're one of the few schools now that has a half day and a full day program. And those are just some of the things that have changed since this time last year when I met with you all. When we look at our data, we started with our 5 essentials. This is our perception data. Teachers, students, and parents contribute to this. We saw gains in a couple of areas in our supportive environment, effective leadership. We saw some decreases, a 1-point decrease in ambitious instruction, and a little bit bigger decreases in the other areas. So when we look at collaborative teachers and involved families, you're going to see that those 2 areas very specifically are addressed in our MIS2, while ambitious instruction and leadership are addressed in MIS1. So 4 of these 5 areas are very strategically addressed through the work that we're going to do this year. I think everybody's probably seen our SPF, but here it is. Where we are at right now, we moved up to 41.1, which put us 0.9 points away from moving to that improvement status. So we made some gains. We did some of that through academic achievement, not just growth, which for me sets us at a little bit firmer foundation as we continue working forward. We didn't see a big springboard because of some growth numbers. We saw some of our gains through academic achievement, which again, foundationally helps us as we move forward. This is our, just a couple pieces of data. You can see these are our Dibble scores for the last 3 years. In this includes kindergarten through 5th grade. So in 2021, we started including 4th and 5th grade in our Dibbles assessment. And you can see that each year, we close the gap from beginning of the year to the end of the year. So we reduce the number of red students and those well below. We increase the number of on grade level and above grade level students. So while our SPF did not come out, as we wanted to on CMAS with a higher gain, we did show, and we have shown consistently over the years, that we are taking steps throughout each year to support students. Not saying that we're satisfied with that and we want to do more, but we are taking some of those steps. These are CMAS ELA scores. You can see at the top, just all of our students in general. We were at 31% proficient or advanced, which again, is not the number we want to be at. We need to get that higher. We left this data, or specifically put this data in here to talk about the differences that we are seeing in some of our demographics, specifically around our white students to our Hispanic students, and the discrepancy that we do see there. We see a much larger number of our Hispanic students performing well below grade level versus our white students. And so this was something that we were asked to look at last year and really track through the DAC accreditation committee. And so it's to say that we still are doing that, and we are taking some very significant or specific steps with our intervention time and some other things to support all students, but specifically to start closing some of those subpopulation groups to the whole. Math, we don't see as much of a discrepancy between some of our subpopulations to our white students, but we know that math, at the end of the day, is our weaker of the two areas. We had 20% of students proficient and advanced last year in math. That's up from the previous year. When you look at our growth scores, our growth in math was not where it needed to be. And while it's not in the presentation, we're low in the district. I don't hide from that. And so we have some very specific work that we're targeting with that, which I'll get to here in a minute. What's our plan? So last year. We sat down in May and started working on this. We've refined it now that the year is up and running. So major improvement strategy 1 is a systems approach to intentional planning and instruction. Major improvement strategy 2, developing a positive culture system amongst adults to support students. At the end of the day, it's all about students, but we have to work sometimes on the adults to get us where we need to be for the students. So with major improvement strategy 1, we have completely retooled our PLC systems. We have those up and running. In the past, sometimes that didn't happen until October. We've been running for weeks now on that, having data conversations, having planning coming from those data conversations so that students are already seeing benefits from that. We're also working with instructional empowerment. This board last year identified a handful of schools to receive that extra layer of support, and we're one of those schools. And so we're already seeing the coaching that we're getting from them having an impact on the day-to-day work that we're doing in our building. They have been, I don't want to say, I was trying to add it up on my way over here. I think of this school year, we're about 20 days in. They've been in our building almost 50% of that time in some form or capacity. And so the work that they're doing with me as a principal, with our teaching and learning coach, with our new dean of students, to support teachers and students has been a huge benefit add for us already, and we're seeing that. Through the work that we're doing there, we're doing weekly learning walks in classrooms. An expectation of our school now is that between the 3 of us, we're in every classroom at a minimum every other week. Myself, I'm in every classroom doing a rigor walk every other week, and then our dean and TLC are in every other week in those classrooms, providing coaching, providing feedback, and looking at how things are going in the classroom. With major improvement strategy number 2, we are really looking at our systems of how we're interacting with adults. Our collaborative work through PLCs, our collaborative work with our parents, We've already done a parent event this year to start the year. The second week of school, we administered STAR testing, and within the third week, we already had reports out to parents. Teachers are assigning homework, but it's saying, here's where your kids are at. If you are not at grade level right now and where you need to be, here are some resources that you can be working on at home. Here's what we're doing in school. Here are some other resources, because we find that a lot of our parents don't know how to help their kids. And I'm gonna speak specifically to math. Eureka Math is a different curriculum. It's new. It's not the way that most of us learned how to do math when we were in school. And so a lot of parents are timid and shy away from it. So we're finding ways through other means and resources to provide videos to parents. Here's the work that the kids are working on. Here's how you can help them at home so that they feel more confident. So we're really working on that time with parents. So when we look at what we're doing, systems in the building, engaging the adults in the system, because it's not just the teachers, it's all the adults in our system. Our central administration supports from Area Superintendent Callback to TREG to all the other people that are in, including instructional empowerment, is really to help our students. So a couple of the other bullet points, and I won't read through each of them word for word, but we also are this year a first year title school. And so we are found out today, I think everything got approved and the state's releasing those funds. But with that, we are putting intentional money towards family engagement activities. I'm already working with one of our other principals in the district that had a lot of success with family engagement last year up at Freedom. So Rochelle Williams and I are starting to work together on what that could look like for our school as well. But a lot of our money was put towards extra intervention support, but giving teachers time to do the work that they need to do. We know that we need extra support when it comes to planning and things like that. So we've set aside money for quarterly teachers to have a professional learning day, to go to another school, do some observations, a school that's doing something really well. We want to go see what they're doing and then do some planning with that. So those are some of the things that, again, before SBF came out, we had to identify all these things back in April and May, and we did that. If we look at those central area supports, we do have our look and learns. So TREG has already been in the building multiple times, walking with our TLC and our dean, getting in and out of classrooms, providing coaching. The look and learns come from instructional empowerment. So it's a very specific and strategic way of looking at what we're doing. So right now at the beginning of the year, we are focused highly on standards-based learning targets. Do they align to what is actually being taught in class? And then student teaming and grouping. So are we getting students to work together instead of independently in all of our areas? We did have a strategic staffing position. We had a dean of students given to us this year through MLO funds. And that is allowing me to be more present as an instructional leader in our PLCs, in our planning times, in our classrooms, because we have somebody to support some of the day-to-day things going on in our building that may have always come onto my plate as principal. So helping with behavior, helping with attendance. Krista is a very knowledgeable person, and so now that we know what her full capacity is, she's also helping instructionally. We're not saying like somebody that has her skill set, we're gonna limit. So we're saying we're gonna utilize everybody to their fullest capacity. Working with our D11 Engage office, we'll look at those community supports. How do we get people in? What are we doing with our before and after school enrichment program? Using our person that runs that program to also be a building liaison for our community throughout the day while she takes over the after school enrichment program at night. So trying to maximize the use of our staffing in a very different way this year. And instructional empowerment. We've already kind of talked a little bit about that. The goal is that they're going to be in our building 30 to 40 times by the end of the year. And when they're in our building, they're not just walking around sitting idly by. They're in my office coaching me. We're doing rigor walks together. A rigor walk is a 15-point rubric that we go into classrooms, and it talks about standards-based learning targets, text in front of students, student teaming, and really how much of the work our teachers doing versus how much of the work our students doing. On our initial rigor appraisal, we found that teachers were doing like 99.9% of the work. we need to shift some of that. We need to get students owning some of their learning, and we've already started implementing some strategies with that. I'm gonna open it up to questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. The first thing the feedback that I want to give is I've been doing this for what now, 6 or 7 years, a couple of years on the DAC and now 4th year on the board. The report that was put together, the presentation and also the USIP that was attached, not only for your school, but it seems like you're following the same format for every other school. It's well put together. It's concise, but it hits all the necessary points. It gives the overview, what you're talking about, the system support from the 30,000 feet level. So well done. I think it's much more easier for the public to understand too, and for us to follow and provide feedback to. I think that it's easy to digest instead of looking at what it was previously, that USIP document. Dr. Kalaki knows about that, formatting and this and that, moving it on the table. It's well put together. Thank you. With that, opening it up for questions and comments and feedback to Principal Ford. Who wants to go first? I guess
All right, well, nobody. I will see you all later.
I don't know what the question was. So with the number of students that you have, is language an obstacle for some of the parents to come and be involved in their child's school? And if it is, do you also have translators? Do you also have materials written in perhaps Spanish and another, but primarily Spanish?
No, absolutely. So this is gonna be the first year in my 5 years that we have multiple families that are coming to us with little to no English background. So we have started working with our CLDE office this year for the first time. We've always had like a student or 2 students, but so we are working on that translation piece. We do have 2 staff members that are bilingual. So as parents are coming in, we actually have 2 new students starting tomorrow. But our speech pathologist was able to communicate with those families. So we do have people in the building that can support in that, so that we're not having to say, we can't help you, let us go to central enrollment. Well, central enrollment does a great job. If they're walking in the front door of our building, the last thing we're gonna do is say, we can't help you, you need to go talk to somebody else. So we're learning the process now this year of how to get everything translated. As we get closer to parent-teacher conference time, we are gonna be looking to get a translator in the building for, again, it's a handful of our students now, but that's new for us this year.
And so under your Title I, there are specific parent involvements that have to occur over the course of the year. And so do you have specific Title I teachers assigned to your school, or is it that your teachers who are already in your school are going to be trained into what the requirements for providing instruction in a Title I school?
So right now, we're looking at the people in our building and training them up.
Does that training come from the district or someplace else?
That's gonna be a great question, and I hear Sherry typing notes right now, because I don't know, to be 100% honest. We have not used any of our Title I funds to hire a teacher. When our funds were first allocated, we were to be a targeted title school, and so we didn't have a full 100% of funds, and we have to be very strategic on how we use those. So we put the money towards supporting teachers in professional learning. We put the money towards student and activity events, rather than saying we're gonna hire a person and then have to say we're gonna be not be able to provide all the students the support for that person. So this first year as a title school, we're taking the step through professional learning and supporting the teachers in the building as we continue to go. We didn't just become a title school barely this past year. We jumped, I think, 8 or 9 schools into it. We're at 69% free and reduced. And so I'm fairly confident that we're not gonna drop out of title next year, hopefully. I'm looking at Dr. Comfort, to keep the money coming. But it's gonna be something that we look at, do we invest in the people that we currently have, or do we invest in more people? And we need to find what the need is. And this first year, we said we're gonna invest in the people that we have.
Because you have a pretty much stable faculty, as I recall.
Not the last couple of years. I mean, we have some stability. Last year we hired in 18 new people, and this year, if I am able to fill all of our positions, because we still have some unfilled positions this year, it'll be 20 new hires this year. So we've had a number of retirements the last couple of years through our teaching staff. 4 of our 12 classroom teachers this year are new to us, and 3 of those 4, this is their first year teaching. So we've seen a turnover with retirees and new folks coming in, and so that's why I said we really want to invest in the people that we have right now and get them coached up and ready to go, because we want to retain.
And that leads to a broader, I think, conversation for the board and for administration, in the sense that 20 new hires is a significant impact for your school in order to be able to deliver the kind of programming that you want to boost achievement. And you look at another school that has maybe 4 new hires, and so obviously the needs for support, the need for professional development, the need for opportunities to build collegiality throughout your building are going to vary by school. And I'm not sure that we have systems in place that allow that flexibility. And I throw that out there for later discussion. No.
I was gonna say, I mean, I have a thought. We've done, knowing this, that's why we're focusing so much on systems in our building. So that it isn't a person dependent, but it's systems dependent. So we're working on our systems so that as people, we know we have one of our teachers on transition this year. It'll be her last year. So we know we're gonna have some turnover, so we're really focusing on that systems piece. And that's been a focus from the district. Like, as we went into our One Plan Symposium back in May, it was very clearly stated at the beginning, don't make this about the people, make it about the systems. And so that's where our focus very much was this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Jurgens.
So taking and piggybacking off of some of the DAC's feedback, I had some questions around, how are we, all these new things that go into your MS1 and MS2, they sound great. How are we following up with them? When you have a rigor walk or you have a look and learn, and you're giving this instructional feedback, are we, tying up that loose end and coming back and saying, I'm coming back to see this lesson, in a couple of days, or when you come back and teach, math again, or whatever it is, how are we met? What are the metrics in making sure that if I talk to, Miss Nelson on 2nd grade math about something with rigor or her learning objective not being, applicable to where they're at right now, and then I whatever follow up, then that system is still no good. And so, one of the things that I read in a book recently on school board work is that student outcomes are not going to change until adult behaviors do. And so that is one of your MS2s, which is great, and you saw a significant dip in your 5E survey on that collaborative environment. So I'm happy to see that as one of your main improvement strategies, but it has to come that full circle, with that coaching piece. So could you speak to that for a moment?
Oh, absolutely. So a little bit more context of the instructional empowerment method of coaching that we are taking on this year. I am in every classroom every 2 weeks doing, again, what's called a rigor walk. That data is then shared with the staff on that 2-week basis so that we're going to see systems improvement over the course of time. Of the 15 areas in that, we have chosen the top 2 areas right now as a school to really target so that we can provide very specific feedback to that. Through our PLC meetings, we changed our master schedule this year, so we have embedded PLCs on Wednesdays, and we also have an instructional planning day on Thursdays. That's how we're getting students in art class. That's how we're doing, they have art, but then they also have a goal-setting class every other week. So students are being empowered to do some of their work, but we're able to meet with teachers and teams on a weekly basis to do the work we need to do. Through the look and learns, so look and learns are done by our TLC and our dean. That's not through the instructional empowerment process. They do that as the coaches. I have the different process of rigor walks as the principal. And so we're both, I work with them on collaborating on what are we seeing, what is going on, what is the common feedback that we can be giving people. And to your point, Director Jurgensen, we're setting timelines. We're seeing this, when are we following up? The coaching forms that we're doing for formal observations. I met with a teacher yesterday. Here's what we're talking about, here's our goal. we set a 2-week time frame to be back in the classroom to follow up with that. So we are being very deliberate in what that coaching looks like, how we're providing it through the systems that we now have, and then how we're following up with that. You're absolutely right, because if we don't follow up with it, and we just give people, here's our data every 2 weeks, it becomes white noise.
Yeah, and to that point, if you're talking with a teacher today and you're gonna follow up in 2 weeks, is that too much time before you stop on by again and go, hey, should it be, when I taught it was like, if it's something that was like, hey, this is something we're coaching you on, it was 48 hours and admin was back in my room checking on it and it was like, yep. And so maybe it even has to be a shorter cycle for you with where we're at, knowing that we're so close to that next level. If we could get you to jump 1 or jump 2 up to performance by tightening up those, review cycles, even from that 2 weeks might be too much time. But that's more for you and your team to decide. But I think that is something that's good to hear and to be very rigorous on with your rigor wise.
Right.
And the last piece was just, you mentioned the identifying subgroups and you gave us even a slide of data of subgroups, but your MS1 and MS2 don't really speak to that. So are you using, you mentioned a little bit of how you're using some of your title dollars.
Right.
Is that with an emphasis then on those subgroups, or could you just kind of fill us in on that since you mentioned it and have a slide on it?
So we do have around $90,000 in our title budget set aside for tutoring and supports. And so we are very much specifically targeting not just a specific subgroup, but anybody that needs a different layer of support and doing that.
During the instructional day?
During the instructional day, absolutely. We've got some teachers that are providing some supports after school. We're trying to get more tutoring after school as well, through after school enrichment and things like that. But right now, during the school day, every grade level has a dedicated intervention block where over the last 10 days or so, we worked with teachers to identify where all the students' needs, broke students down into groups. Every student is receiving an intervention. So whether you're at grade level, above grade level, below grade level, you're getting either pushed or the supports you need to get brought up with that. And so we have that money through title dedicated to that. And you're right, we didn't call that out specifically in our MIS1 because at the end of the day, achievement in both reading and math overall wasn't where we needed to be.
Right.
And so instead of calling it out just as a specific subgroup, we know we have to move everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's why it wasn't called out in the language at MIS1, but it is something that we are very cognizant of and are addressing.
Excellent. And I'll end on this, just seeing the 5E data stay stagnant in the colors, I know, which is there's a bunch of range in the colors, but seeing it stay stagnant when other schools that we're seeing this year are increasing with their USIPs, just hearing the staff turnover of 18 last year and maybe 20 this year, let's figure that out. So
100%, and we have in our one plan, in our USIP, there are specific targets set for point gains in those, and those are very specific things that we're targeting this year. And it's not just the overall category of ambitious instruction, but we narrowed it down to what are our lowest areas in that so that we can target those.
I saw that too, the specific goals that you have set in your USIPs, the teacher to teacher trust or teacher to parent trust, all those things. We got to improve that. It talks to the culture and the climate in the building, that 5 essential data and it being stagnant over 3 or 4 years. That is concerning. Anybody else? Director Nelson.
Do you have as a school standard on homework and practices? And this is not like a gotcha question.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to learn what our schools are doing and it seems like they're all different. So what are you doing around homework?
So teachers can assign homework. To say that I have a specific expectation on homework is not it. My expectation is that homework is for practice and to support students in the learning that we're doing right now. It's not for a grade. It's not, oh, we didn't get this today in math class, so we're sending this home. You need to do this. As our demographics and population has changed the last 5 years, we've seen a sharp decrease in the amount of kids bringing their homework back done. And so, and that's for a variety of reasons. And we're not gonna harm kids grade-wise or things like that or belittle them because they didn't bring their homework back. But we do have the expectation that when homework is given, it is to support what is going on in the classroom. As I was talking about, I'm gonna use our 5th grade team as an example. We met with them today. and they are using their homework time to specifically address those gaps that they have found in STAR for those students that did not hit a grade level to start the year. And so they're then using Khan Academy or extra supports from Eureka Squared to say, here's where your student is, here's how you can help them, and here's some videos to go about doing that. So we are trying to be very strategic in that work that we're doing to engage our parents and give them the resources that they need.
Part of why I ask is, so you mentioned having, I think I saw in here somewhere, the special nights for families to come learn about curriculum and that math is being taught differently. And last year, my son in first grade would have his Eureka Math workbook that was his homework book, and it was awesome for me as a parent because it explains what they're supposed to be learning and the process. And so when you read the question and you think, I don't know what they're asking, you can flip back a page and then it explains it. So I was just curious how much your staff are utilizing those tools. And again, this is not a gotcha. I know even this year I'm seeing a difference in my own children's classroom experience and what those teachers are choosing. And so just wondering if your school had kind of a school-wide policy or if it was more up to the teachers.
It's more up to the grade levels right now. We don't have a school-wide policy on here's how you're gonna do math homework. I know a lot of our teachers that are sending home like their Eureka work, like through the Apply book. They are usually ripping the pages out for that assignment because sometimes we don't get the book back if we don't do it that way. So we're just, tearing the pages out to send that home. So I know the teachers that are using that are doing it in that fashion. But it's a good thing to follow up on and get some more pieces on.
Yeah, so another question I had, I know we didn't really wanna go into specifics, but I am curious, something jumped out at me about the fourth grade in ELA decreasing from 31% to 23% meets exceeds, whereas everything else at least was seeing gains. And so I'm curious if there's anything you wanna speak to about that.
No, the biggest thing that I would say is that mid-year last year, we had a fourth grade teacher leave.
Oh, okay.
And so 2 of our 12 teachers left at Christmas time last year, 1 in second grade, 1 in fourth grade. We were fortunate that we were able to have our TLC at the time step in and take that fourth grade class and do some work in there, but that contributed to some of that. We're doing some very specific work with all of our grade level teams, but our fourth grade team, I have a new team member this year, and layering in a lot of supports for 4 of our 6 teams that all have a new member. What does that extra support look like for them? Because you're absolutely right. We saw that dip. We can't have that dip. And while we can say, well, we had a teacher leave, that's not the only reason. There were some, other contributing factors to that. But knowing that we have so many new people and new teams, we want to be very strategic this year in how to support them as we grow moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking to that support, I just want a clarification on verbiage.
Yep.
When you're speaking about the instructional empowerment team, is that the wraparound services that your school received through the ESSER dollars because you were a priority improvement school, or is that something different?
That is the wraparound services when the board met last year and identified 5 to 6 schools.
Yes.
To give that extra layer too, that is what we're receiving.
Okay.
So it's on-site coaching every other week, all year long.
And that was where you said they've been in the school like 50% of the time?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Just want to make sure I was
Yep.
connecting dots correctly. I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thanks.
Just general with your strategies, are you finding like the family check-in, were you successful reaching 100% of your families with PLCs? Are you feeling like you're on track?
So some of our classes, yes, we got to 100% of that check-in within the first few weeks. We're not there across the board yet. PLCs, we're there-ish. And I say ish, we started the year very norm setting, what is this gonna look like? Through the last couple weeks, we've been using that time to really help teachers understand how to get into the data. Today, we had very, very good PLCs now that we've gotten through some of that piece of getting the teachers the tools that they needed and understanding the supports that we have. So yes, do I feel like we are hitting our stride now with PLCs? 100%. I felt like we got there today, to be honest.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And good luck this year.
Seeing no further questions at this time, I'll kind of summarize too. So I remember the conversation we had last year, about a year or so back, and one of the things that you asked for at that time was having a support as a dean, a supporting position that will open up some more time for you to be in the classroom. And you have that support to the dean position. So
I can't hear you.
yeah, so I'll speak a little louder. So what I was saying is that last year, when Principal Ford was talking to us as a board and he was reflecting on their USIP, one of the requests that he made was for the dean position so that he can have the time to be an instructional leader in the classroom. So you have the dean position. And now the board has also, in the past year, allocated that wraparound support. So you have that wraparound supports. Now you are a Title I school, you get that extra supports because of the Title I dollars. And then we had a conversation a year and a half back when that TLC position was cut to half-time. We restored it to full-time, and you have that full support. You have free before and after school enrichment programs. So there are so many resources that we are invested into Audubon. So at some point in time, we just need that to translate into student outcomes. So that's my thing. I mean, we got to figure out, because those supports other schools don't have at this point in time. And we want to intentionally and deliberately invest that money into Audubon to make sure that the students out there are supported. So that's my overall feedback on it, and good luck, and hopefully all the supports and the help and the daily rigor walks that are happening translates into what essentially we want is every student is thriving academically and are at grade level proficiency. So the other thing that I would say is, generally speaking, as a board, I know that we allocated within ourselves the schools that we need to visit. I would say that just as the district is investing a lot of time and resources into priority improvement and turnaround school, it behooves us as a board to visit those priority improvement and turnaround school to a larger extent. So hopefully we can also invest time and energy into that priority improvement and turnaround school. So our presence out there, just asking those questions and being there is also helping with their progress out there. At the beginning of the school year, when the new principals were introduced up here, the message from the board at that time was that we are going to set high expectations for all our schools, all our staff, and we are not going to be a school district that is going to take excuses. So I'll end it with that: high expectations and no excuses. And good luck to you, and thank you for your staff to being here to support it too. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Great. And we look forward to when this comes back to the board as an action item for the board to approve.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
And for Audubon team, you are welcome to stay if you'd like, and you're also welcome to end your day. Whatever works best for you.
Go ahead and end your day.
The next school is Swigert.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so really, it's almost a repeat of what I said initially. Swigert also made progress within their performance band, not enough progress to move up a level. They are also 9/10 of a point away from improvement. And so, again, we are focusing very much at the systems level on the work. Oh, good, and Erin left you the clicker. So again, in Principal Jim Nason's presentation tonight, you will hear about the systems that they are putting in place at Swigert to move their students, Director Jorgensen, to your point, not just into improvement, but all the way into performance. And so with that, I will turn it over to Principal Jim Nason.
Well, thank you, board, for having us here today, or us, it was me. So Swigert is a school in the southeast part of town. We serve a very diverse community. We're a majority minority school, high ELL population, high FRL population, but we have great kids. They're phenomenal kids.
Is it working for you? Uh-oh. Melissa, doesn't.
Point it at the machine. Turn it off.
It's got presentation mode there, it's got the toolbar at the bottom.
You know what, I'll just stand with the laptop and,
Well, I can do it too. Just-
thank you, I appreciate it, Melissa.
Aaron broke it.
Is that a presentation mode or not? Cause the toolbar at the bottom,
usually matter.
usually that's, presenting mode.
Why is it?
Ah, there we go.
H2?
We can put the next one. Our CMAS data is not where it needs to be, either in the achievement level or the growth level. We looked at our data starting in the spring with the impact team who we received support for. We took a team of teachers, there were 6 teachers that went, and we started to tear apart the data for STAR data in preparation for CMAS data. As we looked at the CMAS data, we started to see some goals and a lot of growths. One of the areas we saw was our special ed population and growth was a half a point away from the next band level. So it's not to where they need at 50 MGP, the growth percentile, but they were 34 to go to 35. So within the data, teachers saw that there was some movement there, but really what they saw is we had to do better at what we were doing. A couple of things that we looked at is, and we'll talk about it, is really a PLC focus and a planning focus. And we broke our special populations down, and in math, we did increase our scale score by 2 points. In both math and ELA, we were fully staffed this year compared to not fully staffed last year, which is gonna be a huge benefit for us. In our academic growth, we saw our multilingual subgroup outgrowing all our other subgroups, which is very positive for us, but that also made us focus on why. Why is that occurring? And again, in our special ed group is at the cut point of 34 for 35 is the next MGP. And again, our math, our multilingual students are outgrowing our other subgroups. And, get it to work?
New batteries.
Thank you, Nicole.
That's cool. And again, our special ed group is on the cusp of that next growth point. We are priority improvement and we are 0.9 points away. I asked Dave to find 0.9 points and he couldn't, but we did want them. As a school, we know what it's like to move from turnaround to priority improvement and to performance. And so we understand the work that has to be done, and there are a lot of reasons why we fell down. But those are excuses and we don't sit on those. When we look at our 5E data, we saw, and Dr. Malpacum, you had pointed out seeing drops in growth. So when we look at our 5E data for 2023, we see that we're on the upward trend again. 2022 was a terrible year for us on 5E data, and I could give you the 10 to 15 reasons why it was, and we had looked what we did to address those. Part COVID, part staff leaving, part just the way staff left, and things that autopsy data. We've addressed those and working through that. One of the things that we've always worked on was parent involvement. It's very difficult for us. Tonight, I was sharing with your Superintendent Callback, we have 200 people, probably 60 to 70 families coming for a movie night. We're doing a movie night. So we'll see how our parent involvement comes up. So in our 5E, one of the things that pointed out as we addressed our material, our data was ambitious instruction, not only from staff, but from students. And so that helped us drive really where we're heading into our systems. We look at our plan of action, and our first major improvement strategy is around PLCs. And we've had PLCs in place in some way, shape, or form, but not to the level that they needed to be. So what we did is our ILT, creating an instructional leadership team, started to tear apart the data, started to look at the cycles of PLC and how we're going to run those through the department. We created a specific room for PLCs and a specific room for data so that all of our data is out front and center for everyone to see. In part in the data room, if you see on the board, we took our CMAS data and each grade level and content in math and ELA identified 30 kids that were what you would call bubble kids on the cusp. Then we correlated that data with the STAR data we had from last year and this year's STAR data to see if there was any anomalies or any insight narrative that teachers had. Those 30 students in each grade level will be monitored more closely than others, but the work on those 30 will transfer and will bleed over into what is done with all students. But we looked at those students and shared with teachers, one of those students hits 4 of the subgroups in CMAS. So by moving that one student up into the next MGP band, we move several up. One that isn't up here is addressing writing, and we talked today with the instructional coach, I'll show a little bit of that. We are focused on writing across the school. Our electives team has volunteered, they did actually volunteer, to take up a writing prompt as part of their work and how they can support the PLC. They are part of a PLC group and they're all individuals or all one else, so this will be a chance for them to look at data, whole school data, and again, feel more part of the work that we're all doing. Our second strategy is around planning, and what we've noticed as we went into classrooms and doing observations is that the planning wasn't at the level it needed to be. With Eureka Math, part of that was just the not understanding how to teach with Eureka Math. We were fortunate to be part of a group that started last January, working with Galileo and another school, I think Man was in it at some point, but Galileo especially, and getting some very targeted PD around Eureka Math, not only with some of the Eureka Math presenters, but with Phil Hutchinson and Paul Bungie. It was excellent PD, probably the best PD that I've had in the district since I've been here, and the teachers just, they took to it. It was planning and they were frustrated, but that planning started to alleviate some of the frustration. Our teachers are probably 2 or 3 sessions ahead of most in the district because they were able to have that. When we look at our PLC process around major improvement strategy 2, we developed a coaching cycle as administration that we are using what's called the Getting Better Faster document that has a management side and a rigor side. So we set specific look-fors in the classroom. They're posted in the PLC room. Teachers are fully aware of that. We send out emails. And we go in with the idea of we are looking for those specific on the management side and those specific on the rigor side. So targets are one that we've looked at, and we know that targets need work. So we're providing PD through the PLC cycle with our teams on writing better targets and stronger targets. All of that data though is front and center, and I know you're gonna hear me say that multiple times. That data is there, and everyone sees it every day. Everyone knows when the module assessments, when the unit assessments are coming up. Everyone can look at the board on the back with the 3 grade levels. Everyone can look at the USIP action steps and where we are on the action steps. And where we are on our coaching cycles. So everything is transparent. There's no gotcha, there's no catch, it's the data. And as Parthi said, the data doesn't lie. We put up our first cycle and the data is in a little pie graph and identifies what we need to do. As administration, we then look back and we triage our teachers. And we send them in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. If the tier 1s are fine, they're great. Tier 2, the instructional coach can work with. Tier 3, we will work with them or some combination. The supports that we received, we did have the ELA social studies and math facilitators do the planning in the spring. I started in January. I was able to use title funding because we weren't able to hire teachers last year to provide the ELA and math teachers with 4 weeks of planning this summer that was facilitated by Phil Hutchinson and by Michael Donnelly and Jennifer. They came in and worked with our teachers for the 4 weeks, and we were able to get their plans for the first quarter and second quarters done, although they make revisions on a daily basis. Sherry Kalbeck is our area superintendent. We meet weekly, we walk classrooms. She comes into the PLC room, she follows up on what we were doing. With the strategic money?
Yes.
The strategic money, we were able to post and hire for an instructional coach. So we have an instructional coach that is there 3 days, 1 week, 2 days the next week. We share her with Sabin. She works directly with our PLCs. She's in classrooms doing observations. She's providing direct support with teachers on a daily basis. We were part of the UVA impact team. We attended UVA to work on what's called their 90-day plan, which is a short version of the USIP. We meet with the impact team on a regular basis, and as they come in, we walk classrooms, and we really look for the instructional core, and that's the big thing that we focus on this year. And in that instructional core, you look at student engagement, teacher preparation, and materials, but everything is centered around the task. And that's what students are doing on a daily basis. So we're looking to make sure that that task, and that's our coaching cycle this next 2 weeks, that task is aligned to standards, it's aligned to the rigor, the complexity, and that the students, are doing the task. The teacher isn't just guiding. So the teacher does instruction, the students are working on the task individually, small groups, pairs, but that task, it has to be aligned to the rigor of what kids are expected to do by the standard and how they'll be assessed on CMAS. Our district facilitators, we are working with them regularly to work not only in the humanities, which is a combination of ELA and social studies, but the math. Phil was out yesterday, taught an example lesson for my teachers, we recorded it, and so that we can now look at that and see how that work is being done in the Eureka Math, because it is such a different way to teach math. And that's it. Questions from you all?
Thank you. Dr. K, remind me one thing. The way the state accountability and that system is set up, starting this year, do schools have to be 2 years off the clock before they get off the clock? You know what I mean? Last year, I think, was 1 year. Schools that were there, like Martinez, got off the clock. So now they are officially off the clock. But going forward, even if they get off the clock this year, they have to do one more.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So it's 2 successive years.
Correct.
Okay. But if they get off the clock next year, they don't have to come to the board to make this USIP UIP present.
That's correct. They
Okay.
just have to maintain.
They have to
They have to
maintain it for
maintain
another year.
improvement or above.
Okay. Hopefully we won't see you next year, so even though you may take 2 years for you to get off the clock. Go ahead, questions?
I have a question. I didn't think to ask it with the Audubon, but it's relevant to all of the schools. When we're doing these observations and things, are they impromptu? Are they announced, planned? I'm just curious what that looks like.
All of ours to up to today were informal and we just pop in. We work with our teachers are fine. They come in anytime you want, they don't care. But by the master agreement, we have to set up. So for example, I have 4 set up next Tuesday that I reach out. I would call to Mr. Jorgensen or email and say, hey, can you meet on Tuesday? We'll do our we'll do the observation, we'll do the post. Those are 1 a year for non-probationary, 2 for probationary. I've been in 22 classes, I think, this year so far. I try to get in 3 or 4 a day, and they're just 10 to 15 minutes where we are, again, looking at those very specific 2 to 3 focus areas, and then we get feedback. And we use a form that automatically sends it to the teacher. There's a portion for the teacher to give us reflection. We see what they need or what they need from us, and we respond with an email. So Mr. Jorgen said, hey, I need some help with Kagan structures. Then we would find someone who's strong in Kagan structures if it isn't me, and we would then give him that support in Kagan structures.
So the non-judgmental observations, I guess, would that be the correct way to say it, are impromptu, but the coaching observations are impromptu, but the judgmental ones, according to the master agreement, you're saying are the scheduled?
Yeah.
Okay, just clarify.
And I would say that they're non-judgmental because we're very clear on what we're seeing and what our expectation is. Because of the transparency of this is what we're looking for. This is what needs to be posted. This is what we need to see. So there is a level of judgment there, but as Director Jorgen said, it's more of a coaching rather than you didn't do it.
Even the scheduled ones you're saying are more of a coaching?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you look at their scheduled ones or their formal evaluations, so
I'm
we're
using
all
the word
aware of the-
judgmental because
yeah.
it's formal evaluation,
It's formal,
but
but we're all aware of the metrics, and so are staff, they're aware of their
Right.
evaluation metrics that they're gonna be, reviewed on.
Right.
How long have you been doing, just to piggyback on your question, I didn't interrupt you,
they're fine.
how long have you been doing those informal observations? Has that just been this year, or is that something you picked up?
We've done those quite some time,
Okay, for the at least past few years?
probably 7 or 8 years. We had teachers would agree that we wouldn't do a true formal, that we do multiple short cycle.
Yeah.
And so we would end up, a teacher will be seeing anywhere from 15 to more So when you triage the teachers, then I see if you're doing what you need to do, you're having success, I wouldn't be in your room as much as if Dr. Mel Packham was struggling with something, we would flood that area with more supports.
So how often are you in classrooms observing? Like I think Mr. Ford said every 2 weeks was kind of his.
Daily.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to, I have 2 assistant principals and myself, so we just got the second one hired on. So we have a board where we will populate who is where, who's going where, and we each take a grade level into content area. But we make sure there's one administrator in the office so that if something happens, but the other 2, and we're kicking each other out, go into classrooms, go into classrooms.
Ms. Callback, do you know on Audubon if his every 2 weeks is impromptu or if it's scheduled?
Those are the rigor walks, just to be clear.
Or
He does more
the-
than those.
Okay,
Yeah.
so are the rigor walks, do the staff know they're coming in or is it he
They
shows up?
may not know exactly the day and time that Erin or Marty or Krista are coming in, but they know that every week they will be seen by someone at some point throughout their week.
Okay.
The rigor walks and the look and learns generally are, I wouldn't say they're unscheduled. The leadership team has a very clear schedule and plan for getting those accomplished. Because quite honestly, if we don't, we get to Friday and we haven't done the things that we
Yeah,
need to
be
do in that
intentional.
week. But that calendar is not necessarily published out to staff. They just know that at some point this week, you will have a leader in your room observing and giving you feedback.
I think the difference in practice, because teachers have been doing that, principals have been doing that for years and years. The difference is that it's strategic now. And I think that the work that's been done to your point about evaluative or judgmental, the leadership piece and the work that has to be done is to say, this is a coaching opportunity. And yes, there will be a time at which you're going to be evaluated, and that can be a bit of a sticky wicket. But I think as a district systematizes that way of going about improving instruction as a coaching model and bringing in the administrative team or your instructional leaders who are targeted in best practices to get done what needs to be done to move kids forward, speaks well for the leadership that goes on in schools so that we can move forward as a team and at the same time have a standard of accountability that if it isn't happening, then there are consequences.
The informal ones, even as they remain informal, become more formal if you're not doing what you need.
Right. Yeah.
You don't do the full, you could continue to do a full formal observation, but the informal, you coach.
Right.
And then you correct.
Thank you.
Any other feedback? Becca? No.
Well, you've staked a lot on PLCs, it seems to me. That seems to be the answer to everything here.
Well, when we moved from, I think we're turnaround to improvement or to performance, it was because of the work we did. And call them what we want, PLCs, it was the work that we did around data analysis and instruction with a group that was out of Denver. And then COVID hit and everything went haywire. And new staff, I looked, I have 15 teachers in the building that have 3 years or less, and they were not part of that. And part of us was we had expectations that we didn't do what we needed to do. So we looked back in losing administrators, so we looked back and said, okay, we need to restart this, but do it the way that we've done it in the past. So I think, yes, staking it on PLCs, but we know that it works.
Okay, all right, that's encouraging. Thank you.
Are there anything from your perspective, Director Art, that they should be putting the focus on? Because you seem to be questioning their focus.
No, I'm just checking in.
Okay,
Thanks.
so you're good? Okay, behavior issues, did you address that when I stepped out? You might have addressed that. Classroom behavior issues, is that something that you guys have? I know coming out of COVID, it was quite prevalent. Is that something that is more in check right now, starting this year?
I wouldn't say the behavior issues are a major issue. What we did this year was we started the PBIS program, the digital program. And part of that includes in Power School, it was difficult to see what teachers were doing because we couldn't see some of the stuff. So with PBIS, we're able to see what are called teacher referrals, and that's a referral where you're correcting behavior. It's not necessarily needs a referral to come up to get discipline from an administrator or a team. It's a call home, it's a move your seat. So each grade level team is putting in those referrals, and then during our EWI process where we look at students, we look at data, attendance, behavior, and coursework, we're looking at that data at a grade level, at a class level, and identifying students that need that additional support. So then we'll reach out to counseling. We have ITSCO, which is a new group that we partnered with that comes in and provides some counseling with us. It's having conversations with kids, but now the data is more readily available, easier to get, and easier for us to see. I think in our first walks, our coaching cycle around management were routines and procedures. And if you have strong routines and procedures in place, your behavior is going to be minimal, and then you're going to have one or two that you deal with. Some of our teachers that were tier 3 in this first cycle, we're going back in and resetting the routines and procedures, reviewing and revising the procedures. I have 4 brand new teachers. 2 of them are ALPs and 2 are from UCCS. And so you spend a lot of time setting things up, yeah. So it's those are the ones that we see more of the behaviors, but what we're seeing is that the routines and procedures aren't in place or are not being done with the fidelity. And just one of the new teachers, she's a great kid. She is a kid at 22. But I can't yell, that's not me. I can't raise my voice, I don't want to be mean. And her name's Montana. And I said, Montana, you're either gonna have to get a little mean. She's about that tall. But you have to get mean or you're gonna really not be happy by November. And I will happen to walk by the next couple of days and she's very soft-spoken and I can hear her soft-spoken voice at a much higher level. And I saw her and I said, how's it going? She goes, I raised my voice and it worked. So it's just really teaching the new teachers how to teach and work with them.
Classroom management.
So I know that a couple of years back or a year and a half back when you were in front of the board, at that time Assistant Principal Carriger was talking about a program you had in your school. Is that not happening any longer?
It's not there, we just weren't unable to find personnel for that.
Okay.
What we are hoping is that with the revamped Tesla, we can use that as a way, but honestly, that group of kids that we had 2 or 3 years ago, we're not seeing as many of those high-level behaviors. There are fewer students that we're seeing there. There's still a need for that type of intervention, but at this point in time, we're able to do it through administration, counseling,
Great.
and people, and so it's fingers crossed.
They're either 8th graders or they're on to high school, right? That for middle school, so.
It's, nature does not like a vacuum, so when you get rid of, when you move one or fix one, one's always gonna pop up like a mushroom, so it's middle school. And we're hoping that we don't get to the point where we have that was a group of 20 kids that were just turning things upside down. And so we haven't seen that, and we hope we won't see that. And I think with PBIS has a parent contact component in, so if I write a referral on Mr. Jorgensen, if I write a referral on Jason, his mom gets a copy of the notification via email. So we have a lot of parent contact that's going, and we see that as a huge plus.
Okay, any further feedback? Thank you for being here. Dr. K, one final question to you too. When the DAC was discussing all this, when schools are close to that cusp of moving there, we consider alternative school level data to see if we can appeal. Are we doing that for any of the schools, or are we comfortable with where the schools are at this?
We're continuing to look at Audubon and Columbia because so the state has several thresholds to tell you if you're even eligible to do it based on different sample of different external measures to CMAS. So that's the first filter. So those 2 schools passed that first filter, so we'll continue to look at it. And for elementary, they go back to Acadience is the #1 metric that we use. There's a list that they accept. Acadience is the one. Middle schools get a little bit gypped because there's a very, very limited number of types of assessments.
What's that process called?
Request to reconsider.
Request to reconsider. Okay.
And that's it. Oh, Penrose as well.
Penrose we are considering,
Yeah.
but Penrose wasn't it a performance?
They allow it to, you can request it even if it's off the clock.
Oh, okay.
It could move them from improvement to performance. They were, I believe, 1.2 points away from the next band.
Okay, cool. Great.
So that's in process.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And the board will hold you to your promise out here when you said you are not going to be here next year.
And I would invite you all to come and watch a PLC someday. I think they're really doing good work and it's fun to watch.
Take you up on it. How's that, is it the Friends of Children program?
Oh,
That's-
yeah.
Is it going well?
Yeah, it's really neat. They kind of go up and down with their kids, so they're doing a really good job and we're starting probably second quarter, start to have some more kids that will go down there as they get more of the little kids during the day to give some support. That's the one where if your day is going not so well, you go down and hang out with them.
Yeah.
It's one of the benefits of having a preschool at your school, you can go hang out with the little guys.
Yeah.
It's fun, but yeah, they're doing very well.
Good, thank you.
All right.
We appreciate the feedback,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, moving on, I think Assistant Superintendent Brian Remick is joining us with the second set of schools. And we have Midland and Columbia. Which order are you going? Columbia first?
Columbia goes first.
That's fine. Great. We have a new principal out there, Ms.
Yes.
Ancio. All these movement, Treg was here and she used to be a king, now she is an instructional thing and now you are. It's hard enough keeping track of you in one school, now you keep moving. So, welcome to Columbia. And I stopped by your open house, it was exciting to see all the things and the art pathway that you are going on. So go ahead, share what you guys have to do.
Thank you, President
Okay.
Malpack, and we appreciate that brief introduction, but very informative. On behalf of what the previous schools and principals and area superintendent callback said, we're here with the same breath, that priority improvement is not good enough, performance is good enough, and where we should be. We hope that you hear, feel, and see that tonight within their plan. They went up from, I think they're 0.5 away, so they were 1 point away, now they're 0.5 away from being at the next level of improvement, and I think it's about 12 percentage points away from being at performance. So hopefully continue with the work of introducing Principal Atencio, who to President Malpack's point was at Wilson last year, but this is her first year at Columbia. We hope tonight you hear about the systems that are built around instruction, culture and climate, and community engagement, and to President Malpack's other point, he's stealing all my thunder, the A+ pathway as one of the 2 AMP schools that have been embedded into their schools this year. So without further ado, we hope all this work leads to improved student outcomes. So I'll turn it over to Principal Atencio. Thank you.
Great. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to see you. And I love how often people are at Columbia. Maybe it's because our location close to downtown, but I love it. So our doors are open for you at any time, and I'm going to see if this.
By the way, I just want to say that logo is so cool.
I don't
just
have
stands
anything
out.
to do with the logo, but I love it. I love it. And we have a spirit store.
Especially with that arts thing.
Yes.
Great.
Is it working?
Well, let's see, I'll try.
There
There
we
we
go.
go. So this is just a summary of who we are at Columbia that has to do with the A+ designation. We received that in August. Formally, we had all of our staff trained. We did a week-long training at Tesla for the arts integration, and it was fantastic. It was really great to have all of our staff to get to know each other, and I'll talk more about that later. But the arts integration is weaving the standards through arts content area in every classroom, not just drama, music, but in first grade, each grade level. Oh, what did I do? What did I do? There we go.
There we go.
There we go. So this is our staff story. There are 12 new to Columbia staff members this year. And I just love the quote from Brad Johnson that a high-performing school is built from a strong culture, and strong culture is built through positive relationships, and that's what we're about. And I hope you felt that at our open house. There is an excitement at Columbia. 5 of these new staff members are classroom teachers, 4 specials or essentials teachers are new, a TLC is new principal, new school counselor, and we were able to apply for and received the dean position at Columbia. So our dean is a dean of behavior and instruction, and this person was hired, she was the PE teacher at Columbia for 7 years. So is steeped in the community, knows every single student and a lot of the parents. So that was a win for us. Again, all the staff participated in the arts integration training, and we had 2 full days of capturing kids' hearts. So our staff had 7 full days together of training before a student stepped foot.
I'll just make a quick comment out there. You have that picture. I've known Miss Fairburn, is it?
Yes, Fairbairn.
Fairburn. I've known her for several years. You have no better PLC than she's awesome. So
I
you've
know.
got the best.
I didn't
PLC.
realize the connection until open house and she told
Yeah.
me. Yeah, so that's fantastic. We are very fortunate. Can you just do
Yep,
that
I'll
for
do
me?
that for you.
Awesome.
I'll follow your lead.
Okay, so this is our SPF story. Columbia was a performance school for 2 years pre-COVID. Post-COVID, Columbia has slipped into priority improvement and priority improvement last year. And as Mr. Relic alluded to, Columbia was at 41%, which is 1 point away from improvement. And last year we were 41.5, which is half a point away from improvement. So we're approaching an academic growth and achievement. I'm just gonna move on. This is our creation of our MIS, again, priority improvement for the past 2 years. We didn't have, it was, held harmless for those COVID years. We have below 50% growth in our MGP and ELA and math. And these 2 slides are a comparison of STAR data from our minority and non-minority students.
Are you a high FRL school?
We are a title school.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes, so we're in the 60s, I think about 62%. I'm just skipping through these. This is our Dibbles data. I know that Acadient's data, Dibbles data is going to be looked at for the appeal process for our rating. I hope that works for Columbia.
I do too.
What I see is a great need here with our Dibbles data. I think there's a wonderful opportunity for improvement at Columbia, no pun intended, but there's a great opportunity there to show some growth this year. This is our beginning of year, this year data. Moving on, this is a wonderful tool that we all received during our leadership symposium at our back to school training. This was our interim assessment collection of STAR data. So if you take a look at 3rd grade, 47% of our students are coming in to 3rd grade at did not meet. That's an assessment for the end of the year, okay? Just to be clear on that. The exciting thing is that when we look at 4th and 5th grade, those numbers drop to 18% in each grade for ELA and math. So again, when I reference the Dibbles data, we have some systems work to do so that kids are coming into 3rd grade, students are coming into 3rd grade with 47% not sitting and did not meet. We have some excitement in 5th grade with 3 of our students sitting in exceeds and 8 students sitting in meets. So we have a pretty large group that are choiced into our GRT program there, and that's exciting to see too at Columbia. This is our 5-year data over the past 4 years. You can see a trend away from green and into red. I'm going to quote Jim Nason, it won't be there next year. The excitement again at Columbia is palpable. The systems that we have in place for collaborative teachers ensures that that red won't be there next year. We have a double plan time for teachers because of our arts integration piece. Students go to 2 specials a day. So 3 of those extra plan times are embedded and structured. So we have MTSS meeting with our Dean of Instruction. All teachers meet with her once a week to go over students based on behavior, attendance, and academics.
Awesome.
We have a PLC structure that is for each grade level. They meet with our TLC, Ms. Fairbairn, every week. We also have our teachers are meeting with a specials teacher to work on the arts integration piece. So all of that time is embedded in the day, and they're being forced to collaborate, and they're excited about it. There's a real excitement about the collaboration. In fact, effective leaders will absolutely change because it's not just me. I have a fabulous team. I have Katie White as our dean, Savina Fairbairn as our TLC, and Patty Kretzmar as our counselor. And together we are called the Little Leadership Team. And the 4 of us are in classrooms every day. So as a team, I know that that's going to change. Involved families, I'll show a slide later on that will show where we're going with involved families at Columbia. So again, our 5E data, our MIS2 is around systems and support to support teachers with discipline and to work on culture. The avenue that we chose for that was capturing kids' hearts. All of our staff attended a full 2-day training. They are a smaller team of that is going to 2 days of training next week called Process Champions. They're kind of like the steering committee for capturing kids' hearts at our school, which that addresses collaborative teachers, supportive environment, and effective leaders as well. I met last spring. I went to Columbia on numerous visits and met with as many teachers as wanted to meet with me. I scheduled 15 to 30-minute meetings. I also attended PTO meetings and SAC meetings last spring, and what I heard from everyone was we want to focus on culture. We really need to work on that, and we need to focus on discipline. So that is where the focus on capturing kids' hearts came from, because I've seen it work. I've seen it turn around a school as far as discipline goes. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is our panorama survey data, just a snapshot that shows some positives. This is teacher perception of classroom effort, emotional regulation, engagement, self-efficacy, self-management, and social awareness. So I think it shows that teachers are wanting what's best for kids, and they're believing in the students. One thing that's exciting about this utilization report is when you look at our enrollment in 2022, I believe that says 265. And right now we've been anywhere between 308, 310 in Power School since the beginning of the year. And that it's pretty fluid. It changes just about every day.
Yeah.
We have a pretty mobile population, but it's trending upward. So we're excited about that as well. Okay. This is panorama survey data on hope. There's a lot of research on hope for students, and this change trending downward, I think, is important and part of capturing kids' hearts. We've already seen a shift in that. We have morning meetings every day, school-wide morning meetings, where we talk about good things. And we start our day with good things. Students, and it's already student-led by 5th graders. They greet kiddos at the door by name. Our 5th graders are asking other students what are their good things. So it's shifting the focus of school as we walk in to a positive. It's very quick, it's less than 10 minutes, and we've started it in place of recess, so it's not taking away any instructional time. but recess has just started earlier. So, that's what's happening. And so, what do we do? What do we do at Columbia to make some change? We have a creation of an ILT, which is an Instructional Leadership Team. We've also have a BLT and an ELT, and that's Enrichment Leadership Team. So everyone is on one of those 3 teams, so people don't get to hide. We have weekly meetings with PLC, which I talked about, analyzing data, looking at instructional practices. We started our PLC with an article on it's not the what to teach, it's the how. And so we're not there yet, but the purpose of those is that we're teaching in front of others. We are doing the math in front of our teammates. We're getting feedback and coaching from the TLC right there. We have coaching cycles. We triaged our teachers as well with our dean, our counselor, and the TLC to offer the most support. We have a couple of teachers who are engaging with teachers coaching teachers and have already had support from the district level with that. Identifying and training a process champion team, that is happening next week. We've already identified the team, they are getting trained next week. And Capturing Kids' Hearts provides what's called a strategist that comes out to your school and walks the building and helps you with implementation as well.
Before you change, remind me again, a process champion team?
Process champion is the steering committee for Capturing Kids' Hearts.
Gotcha.
Which I think, there we go. Schools implementing Capturing Kids' Hearts processes experienced 41 increase in pro-social skills, which is what that panorama data reflects, and 33% fewer discipline referrals. So we'll have to get to May to see, but so far so good. And I couldn't do this without all the central supports. Mr. Relic has been a frequent presence at Columbia. I mean, you're walking classrooms, you're helping me with facilities, with getting our air conditioner back working. It's great.
A man of many talents.
Yes. Dr. Bankus has been by. We walked the school and looked in, had a great time in a kindergarten classroom. We have a UVA, University of Virginia coach with the impact team, LaDawn Beatty. She and I meet every other week, and we walk classrooms. That has been really helpful to look at the building, at that 30,000 foot view. What are we seeing school-wide, and how? And we go through coaching conversations, mock coaching conversations together. Our instructional coach, Leslie Rutberg, she was there again today. She has been in our building, I mean, probably 5 or 6 times already, supporting teachers, supporting me, supporting our TLC. Laura Lee is helping with our arts integration. We have a lot of support at Columbia, and we feel very fortunate to have all the support we do. Here we go, and this is what we had our first second cup of coffee meeting at Columbia, the first Friday of the month in September. And this captures about half of the people that were there. They said it was the largest group they'd ever seen. There were probably 40 to 45 people in the library. If you feed them, they will come. We brought bagels and coffee and
tablecloths.
And tablecloths, yes. So we shared, it's the same slide deck. We shared this slide deck with parents and just wanted to let them know what Capturing Kids' Hearts was, what arts integration is, and took a survey of what they want to know about, and that's how we base our agendas for the rest of the year. Our PTO met also last week, PTCO, and their 3 tenets are raise, spend, engage, and there was probably 15 people at that meeting. And then our SAC is involved with that as well. So involve families, I think will also change on 5E. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Questions, comments?
Yeah,
I
feedback,
probably
thank
spoke
you.
more than I
Thank
wanted to.
Again, well put together presentation. Just a quick question to you. After you've been there at Wilson so long, what prompted you to move from Wilson to Columbia?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there were a lot of things that were happening at Columbia that I was hearing about, that it was an arts integrated school. That's my background, is I have a bachelor's of fine arts in art education. I started in the district as an art teacher, art on a cart at Queen Palmer. So my daughter went through every art program here in District 11 and in the community. I live less than a half a mile away from Columbia. I walk by it all the time. When I found out that it was arts, I really got excited. I got really excited about that, and I think sometimes it's time for a change.
Okay.
It was
Fair
time.
enough. Well, Superintendent Gall talks about Mary Poppins jumping out of the.
He does, all the time.
Yeah, hopefully we see that soon.
Yes, hope so.
Thoughts, feedback? Director Jurgens.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. I know that last year, student behavior was a huge issue. The inmates were running the asylum. And no matter, how much positive, if you look at the 5E data, no matter how much they were trying to increase positive phone calls home and things, you still have to deal with the discipline side.
Sure.
And so, the fact that you have a dean now that's focusing on behavior and instruction is wonderful news. I ran into her at Coronado because her daughter runs cross country, and she said, "It's been amazing this year so far." Like, she is so excited that you are there and that you're giving her the pathway to do her role.
Yes.
So that was just really good to hear last week at the ribbon cutting ceremony. So very good on that. Having the positive mentality and speaking piece. I mean, every morning I wake up, the first thing I do is journal about my day and how thankful I am for what I've been given. And that really does set your day. And so if we're doing that with kids and the Capturing Kids cards, and we're saying, with some positive things we can speak over our lives, what are we thankful for? It may not be the best bed or it may not be the best car, but I had a bed last night. I had, I had running water this morning. I mean, things that a lot of us take for granted. So the fact that we're doing some sort of that with positivity, because what we speak comes to pass. So if we're speaking good things over us, good things will happen. So that's good to see. I feel very positive about where you're at with Columbia, because if you look at your 5E data, a lot of that, I think you're gonna knock out those red and orange areas because of the leadership change and some of the other supports you've brought in. So I'm not gonna be as, what's the word? More inquisitive or more stern as I would maybe some other principals, because you're new to the spot and I think you've already got some things in place. But that being said, the backside of that is, hey, we don't even want to see you again next year. So as a result, so
all these schools are so close. The two ones were 0.9 and this is 0.5.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No pressure.
Dr. Casey.
Those were staring at us.
I'm just reporting, I just reported this.
Just
You guys do the hard work.
Yeah. But other than that, I think, you have a great team, and just having the feedback of the behavior piece is huge. I think, and that's why you saw a lot of staff turnover, is they were so frustrated with the fact that they couldn't get the support they needed. So you have that now this year, you have the Capturing Kids' Hearts, the arts integration. I think you're gonna be on the right track, just follow it through the whole year and you should see good things.
Thank you. I think, to why did you come to Columbia? I think the experience that I had at Wilson really prepared me for Columbia in a way that I wasn't prepared, that I didn't think. High poverty rate, and so a lot of the supports that we put in, I've just brought to Columbia. We have a mobile market, we have Cooking Matters, we are partnering with Care and Share. And so to create that loss of traction, reduce the barriers to coming to school.
Right.
We've gone out to the shelter, we've met with the parents, we've taught with them. So I think that's helped.
That's great.
I didn't complete that thought, which I talked about. What I meant to say is you are the Mary Poppins out there.
Oh,
So,
gosh, I'm gonna
Director Bankers.
I have a question back on our data story. It's
Yes.
slide 12. And I'm looking at question 4. How often do you expect good things to happen to you at school? And while the other numbers are fairly constant, this the once in a while and almost never strikes my attention, because to me, the number seems high. Where, when you compare them to the others, because sometimes with the others, you may have those few children who are just having a difficult place in life because of home and whatever else. But on this question number 4, it raises my concern. And you have a dean now, and discipline, it seems like, is, from what I'm hearing, is calming down and getting to a better place. But is there something there that we should be addressing specifically, looking at specifically? Is there a group of kids that hang together that just have that mindset? What do you think those numbers represent?
What I've seen with, again, we have a new counselor, a new dean, a new system, is that there was so many great things going on at Columbia and so many challenges. And I think with the number of leadership team that we have, we're able to close the loop with students. It's not just we're getting in trouble and we're going back to class and we're documenting it. We're getting in trouble and then we're we're doing the restorative work. And so that ends with kids, even if they made a poor choice, they know that something good happened because it was restored. I know hope isn't a plan, but that's my hope, is because we've already done probably 4 restorative circles in different classrooms. Yes, this can happen. We're a community, and this is what we do as a community, as we come back together and we repair and we rebuild. So I think that will address those things.
Thank you.
How are you using your Title I funding?
Capturing kids' hearts.
I was wondering, that was actually a question. How are
It's a
you
large
funding
bill.
capturing kids' hearts?
Yes,
So
they're
was
very
there
proud of that program.
Was there a SEL program there before, like Random Acts of Kindness or any of the others?
Yes, they were doing random acts of kindness,
Okay.
and there was a counselor there was a social worker, they were doing all of those.
So we're swapping capturing kids' hearts for Random Acts of Kindness, or are you doing both?
We're doing both.
Oh, wow, okay. I appreciated the breakdown of your new staff and what those positions were, so just thank you for including that. That was kind of a nice little helpful for us to know what your staff looks like within the school and the new position. So can you speak a little bit more to the extra planning time you mentioned that your staff are getting because of it being a pathway school? I don't know that I knew that was happening. So can you just teach me on that our schools are getting that, the pathway schools are getting extra planning time?
Columbia is.
Oh, okay.
So that was a multi-day, that happened in the spring. We had a big group of people, about 10 people, really working out how do we create a schedule to offer everything that we want to offer. And what we worked out is that our students go to back-to-back essentials. So they have a choice, not choice, but they have dance, music, drama, PE, what am I forgetting, and regular music. Art is an arts integration school. So they go to 2 of those a day. And we wanted, of course, we know that teachers need to have more plan time, but we wanted to own that as well and really structure it so that it didn't become lost time. So we're able to do that because of the extra FTE that we were given by District 11 and the AMP program.
Okay, so because of being a pathway school, you
Yes.
have extra FTE, but
Yes.
now you're able to cover
Yes.
the time
Yes.
with staff.
Yes.
You have that planning. So how much extra is it? Like, do you know the minutes that it equates
45 minutes a day.
additional compared to all of our other elementary schools? That's really interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Director Nelson, I appreciate that question because I think it also goes back to Director Bankus' question. We have an A+ arts integration programming that's offering dance, music, and drama. And I don't know about you all, but I don't know how many elementary students get that opportunity outside or inside of D11 across the state of Colorado. I know I didn't get it. And so I think there is some renewed interest in these types of activities because of the whole culture of that school.
that was all I had, thank you.
Yeah, a question I should have asked the others as well. So this year we had the opportunity to provide training for our ESP, our clerical staff, our classroom assistants, paraprofessionals and all. Did any of your staff participate in that training that you know of?
I am unaware of how many attended that.
Okay,
But I can
it's
find
a
out and get
question.
back to you.
Because I would like to see it, there were 4 sessions and some of them were really large, 55 people and stuff. And some were smaller, 17. And some folks, as I asked this question around the district, I didn't know that was for me because I've been in the district for 2 years. But it was still a benefit to you because things change and information is out, so. I should have asked the other 3 too.
So I refreshed. We were at the Arts Integration, the 5-day A+ training during those. So our ESP attended the Arts Integration training.
So who does the training in your school if you get a new educational assistant in your school for either regular ed or special ed? Who does the training?
So we have an ESP liaison who meets with them, and it depends on the job. So we just hired 2 new kindergarten aides, and I met with them before. We hired really high quality people that had already worked in a preschool or a child care program. So there's ongoing training of the D11 systems for RANDA, Perform, those types of things. We're doing that on the job training.
And along those lines, we have a special education EA trainer from our SPED department that comes out in the central area to support on that end on top of everything that's provided in-house.
What part of the beginning of the year does that happen?
It happens as needed. You know what I mean? So like if for example, they were hired today and this is a Tensio one, some the next week, we would call that person and have them come as soon as possible. So it's just an ongoing continuous model to really differentiate for what the school and the students and their IEPs and the staff need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's not a cookie cutter is what I'm trying to say, Director Bank. It's for student focused.
Thank you.
So one of the slides mentioned the attendance rate is 84-85%. Which of the strategies do you expect to best address that, or all of them, and how?
Yeah, I think our MIS2 and MIS3, I think the arts integration piece that kids get, especially 5th grade, they have specials right away, so they don't want to be late. So I think that is addressing that, capturing kids' hearts, again, focusing on good things. Kids are going home and telling their parents that they got to share out their good thing. And again, because it's such a tight-knit community, people are running into people at garage sales. Oh, I heard so-and-so got to share out their good thing. So those 2. And then the first one, of course, is the most important about instruction. And that's what we're addressing in PLC. So when students are engaged in exciting instruction, then they want to be at school. I'm gonna keep on talking. And then if we reduce those barriers, if we are providing food and just things to make things just a little bit easier for families, then they will come.
I appreciated you mentioning removing the barriers earlier, and I was like, oh yes, okay. Just in MIS 1 too, you referenced 2024 and 2025. And so looking ahead, you're not aiming for this year. Just curious about that. I mean, I understand that maybe the effects will show up as complete next year, but I was just curious why you didn't say, by January or by the end of the school year.
I think that's a great point. That's a great point. Of course, those things are happening. We have goals for January, and by the end of the year, we have coaching cycles, but it's not listed right there. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, and on the technicality note, just looking at the UIP working document, I'll let you know, page 16, the MIS 2, so the second, has no associated root cause.
Okay.
I don't know if that's purposeful or just something that got
Okay.
missed.
Okay.
And under the third one on the same page, 16, the third strategy, the root cause says number 1 and is the same as the first one.
Okay.
So that could entirely be intentional, but I thought I'd mention it just in case something went awry with cut and paste, or who knows what.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
That was it for me.
Great. So you got that feedback, so hopefully you can incorporate that in there. And also going back to MIS1, I know that 2024-25 it talks about that. And if you can have it something more specific for this year, by the end of this year too. Those are the feedback that came from Director Rock. Thank you so much.
As long as that's, whatever your intention is,
Yep.
ideally that reflects it.
It's not to wait a year.
Yep.
So I appreciate it.
Okay, sounds good.
I've been a copy and paste there. Yeah, good go. Thank
Okay,
you all.
Looks like you got some.
I
goodies.
do, I have swag, I have swag. So you're all invited to our birthday party.
Oh, yeah, I
Thursday
forgot
night.
about that. That's tomorrow.
125 years, going strong. There's gonna be food trucks. Come see all the exciting things that are happening at Columbia. You bet.
Nice.
You're waiting for Jason.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you, and also keep us invited to your arts program and Satencio? I was just saying, keep us invited to your,
Of
all your
course.
arts program and stuff like that, that the
course.
students will be
We
putting.
will,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Midland, is that next? Oh, okay.
We're here.
Oh, okay.
Thank
So
you.
that's under you now.
Yeah, yeah.
It used to be under Dr. Hanford, but now you do this. Okay,
Yeah, he's here to check on us. Thank you for being here.
for moral support.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for having us here. Karen Newton here is principal at Midland, and maybe you know last year, or you remember last year, she was principal at West Elementary and Midland, and so this year, she's fortunate and excited enough to work strictly with Midland Elementary, and I'm excited to say she's got a great plan she's put together. She's worked with UVA. We've consulted with UVA. She is excited to share her plan. Every time she gets a chance to talk about it, it is spectacular, and I'm excited about it. So we'll see what you think here. But having said that, Karen.
Yeah, I mean, if she was to pick a school, I thought maybe you would go with West Elementary because it's off the clock, but you're coming back to. But thank you for moving West Elementary because that happened under you.
Performance, first time ever for that
Is that right?
school. Yeah, so
Okay, now we just
I'm
have
proud of
to-
that. We had COVID in the middle and we still got off the clock,
We
right?
just have to move Midland too, so.
And I think we will. I know we will.
Well, I mean, the star data, this is the school that seemed to indicate we are moving in the right direction, but then the CMAS data didn't align with the star data. I am probably going to ask you that question later on.
Well, as you know, I've now been the principal at Midland for 3 years. I'm starting my 4th year. I finally feel like we have some traction. It was really hard to get started during COVID, but we're up and running. A little bit about our school. I think most of you are familiar. We are the furthest southwest school in the district, and we're small but growing. We had a big decline in our enrollment the year before COVID, and as I came in, we lost kids, I think, because of the loss of a program, IB. But we're on our way back up, and so I think that's exciting. And on this page, what I really wanted you to see is that 65% of Midland students live in our attendance area, but 22% come from outside D11. So we're doing good things that are bringing kids into D11, and I'm really proud of that. And I think our data story from our 5E tells how things have changed on campus. I mean, the highest performing essential for Midland now is ambitious instruction and supportive environment. And you know from my being here in the past that my first priority when I stepped into Midland was to fix the culture, right? It was not a happy place, there were not happy children, and now there are. And we continue to work on that. And I know, I wanna go to the next one because this data here is really the outcome of that culture and climate work. Our attendance has been in the low 90s, 91, 92, 92.1. We can say that's growing, right? 0.1. Right now we're at 93.4 for this year. Hopefully we don't get any big flu viruses or anything and that will affect that. I think the next one is really important, office referrals. If we go from last year before last to last year, those reduced significantly. In-school alternative also reduced from 37 to 11. And I don't want to stay in the weeds too long, but I'm so proud of this because an in-school alternative is when we take a student from their grade level classroom, because I only have one per grade, and we don't send them home. We might move them to a fourth grade classroom for the day, so they're still exposed to students and they're still in a classroom doing work with a teacher they can ask questions of. And then as you can see, our out-of-school suspensions have gone from 56 to 8. And I think what 8 tells you is that is only when absolutely necessary. If we can keep a child in school, then we can teach them. And if they're not there, we can't. So, and we have a lot of supports, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So our data story that you see up here in the next part is really about our SPF. And you know, I took over the school in turnaround. We were stuck there because we didn't test. We sent kids home in 2020. Then the following year, we were on, what did they call it, frozen, right? And then we finally got to test and we didn't have growth scores because we didn't test the year before. And then last year it came in with insufficient data because we're a small school. If you look at that insufficient data year, the only scores we had on the SPF were for academic achievement. And we earned 35% of the points available, right? This year, for academic achievement, we earned 47.5% of the points. But the reason why we didn't come out better is because we didn't make growth. And I can talk about that a little farther. If we look at the data I have on the next page, is there one for achievement before growth? We can do growth first. Okay, so I want to start with achievement because that's that area where I said we went from 35 to 47.5. So this tells a bigger story. In 1819, only 10% of the kids were proficient or advanced in math, and only 12 were proficient or advanced in ELA. Makes sense, we went to turnaround, right? The following year, you can see that we skipped a year, right? And then there's a score in there where we're 10 and 24, and then we go to 18 and 27, and then finally this year, 23 and 28. So the percent of our kids that are proficient or advanced is increasing. So we're raising our scaled scores. Not enough though, right? Not enough, and we know that. It's really, nobody would ever be satisfied with 28% of your kids being proficient, right? When we compare that SPF data from CMAS to our STAR achievement data, STAR was right on. If you look at math, it said 20% of our kids were proficient or advanced, and in CMAS it was 23. Very close. In ELA it said 26, and we were 28 on CMAS. So it was a great indicator for us of how we were doing. We were able to use that benchmark through the year to guide our instruction. When we look at growth, STAR was not as strong an indicator for us. We actually had an MGP on STAR of 61 in math and an MGP of 43 in ELA. And boy, if those had carried over to CMAS, then we'd be green with the other school. They didn't, and I've dug into a lot of individual student data to try to figure out where that happens. I think a piece of it is third grade isn't part of CMAS growth, right? But it is part of STAR growth. STAR is third, fourth, and fifth. Dr. Colicky has looked at this for us. He's looked at the differences. We've talked about mobility, all those things. The bottom line is, we didn't make it. We were close to getting to that 35, which is the magic number to be improving on those growth scores. And if we had made 35, which was 0.5 away for math and 2 points away for ELA, they both would have been improving, and then we would have been improvement. At least that would have taken us a year off the clock, right? In Acadians, which is that data that Dr. Colicky referred to that you can sometimes use if you want to request to reconsider, we didn't have a gangbuster year. If you look at our year before, we did much better at raising kids. But I think the positive to call out of that is that we raised the percentage of students exceeding from 28 to 43. So good job on the high end, but we have to reduce the number of kids that are on REAP plans. And in the previous 3 years, we met our goal of reducing the number of kids by 50%. And this year we only made 9. It's not enough. And so we've made some changes in order to help with that. I was given a 0.5 from the gift of FTE this year, and so I now have an additional 0.5 early literacy interventionist, and so she is working with us part-time to help raise those Acadian scores. I also have 2 of my interventionists now that are teaching the Take Flight program, which is for dyslexia, and we have enough kids with indicators of dyslexia that we're essentially running a full program every day with 2 teachers. So what our theory of change, our theory of action, what are we gonna do? Probably looks a lot similar to last year. My major improvement strategy is still PLC. Why? Because it works, but what's different? What's different this year is that feedback loop. So I am now, as the principal, in every PLC. I'm at one school, I'm in every PLC. When we look at data in that PLC, we talk about what happened, how it happened, we look by student, by standard, what do we need to do differently? And the teacher plans. I'll give you a quick example. Is in a math PLC, we looked at the unit tests that the kids had taken, they were sorted. We looked at what questions they got right, they got wrong. We found one really high impact question, right? It encompassed what the kids needed to get out of that unit. We also found that about 70% of the kids got that right. So we went back to the class and we set up a time, and I went back and observed the teacher have 2 students who got that right teach the other students how they did it, right? And it was just that guided discourse that the teacher was doing, the student was presenting, and then we gave them another exit ticket, and we went from 75 to 90. So we still have a couple kids that didn't master it yet, but it's also spiraled through that Eureka Math curriculum, so it's not over, right? It's not a one and done. So I think that's the real difference in this major improvement strategy, that it's that coaching loop. I go to the PLC, the teacher and I and the TLC and our area instructional coach, we work together to decide what the next steps might be. The teacher tells me when they're gonna put that in place in the classroom, and then either I go or Katie, our TLC, goes. So somebody goes to follow up, watch the instruction, and then we look at, did the data change? And I think that's really what it's about. And in working with the impact team, one of the things that we talk about is the real accountability is in what the students are being asked to do. And so if we make sure that the tasks that the teachers put in front of the kids meet the standard, and the kids are the ones doing the task, then we know that that's the outcome we're gonna get on CMAS. If we feed them the answers and support them and scaffold everything, then when they get to CMAS or STAR, they're gonna fail because they haven't had a chance to succeed. And so that's a big chunk of where Major Improvement Strategy 1 is going. I'll talk about supports for a second because they really fit in on this Major Improvement Strategy because that's where Midland is getting the most district support. We were chosen to be part of the UVA, so I was blessed to get to go to that training over the summer. We were out there for a week. It really re-energized me as a leader. We worked on a 90-day plan. We also just worked on what are we gonna say to our staff on the first day back? How are we gonna build their readiness for welcoming kids into the building? And I think, it helped me to be more prepared to do that. And I also have all my staff back. So
That's nice to hear.
K-5, every teacher.
That's nice to hear.
And many of the supporting teachers as well. I lost one to retirement, and there are a few, but the classroom teachers are the same people. And so we hit the ground running. I mean, they're moving on Eureka Math, they're already into Wonders. There was no get up and running time because they're back in their own classroom, it's already set up and we're good to go. So I expect things to move along a lot faster. One of the pieces of the UVA impact team thing that you guys gave us is that I get to work with LaDawn Beatty as well. And today, she was with me till 3:20. I didn't know this started at 4. I thought it was gonna be 5:30. And then I looked it up and I went, 4 o'clock. It's a good thing I was 4th, right? I got to sit and relax a little bit. But LaDawn is amazing. And what we've chosen to work on together is feedback. So when she comes to the school, we meet for a few minutes and then we are in classrooms. And we walk and we script and we gather as much information as we can. And then we come back to my office and she's a thought partner for me. What did you see? What did I see? What did the teacher ask? Were those questions the right level? And then in the end, what we land on is what we think is the highest leverage, bite-sized piece of feedback I can give that teacher to take it to the next spot. And it's wonderful for me. We never stop learning. And this year, I have the opportunity not only to work with Darren and Marcy, but to have LaDawn coming every other week and really spending a full half day with me and being in classrooms. So her experience is going to make me better, and if I'm better, my teachers will be better and my students will achieve better. We have lots of other central supports besides UVA and Impact Team. I want to address a little bit, and I didn't hear anybody talk about this cascading professional development model that's come out of the district this year. My teachers are loving it. Everything is aligned. I learn it, my TLC learns it, my teachers learn it. We were given the opportunity to be on the front end of text first planning. They're all in. So they've all been to the first day already. They're ready to go to the second one. They're going to start working on learning about text dependent questions. So having all this support and having that professional development aligned to what we're doing, I think is going to show up in our classrooms and show up in our student performance. So I feel like we really do need to call it wraparound support, right? Because there are all those pieces that go together. On top of that, I was given a preschool. Man, it's amazing. Those little people. We have a full day 4-year-old preschool. It's taken a while to fill because we didn't get our license until August. But we're up to 13 kids and 16 is the max, so we're almost there. All that stuff that has to go through the state kind of slows it down a little bit, but that is an amazing program. So I've got 13 kids right now that I know are gonna be my kindergartners next year, right? I don't think they're gonna leave because they've become a part of the Midland family. You also gave me an after-school enrichment program. Last year I did West and Midland at Midland because I couldn't manage an after-school program at two schools. This year, because West has a new principal, we've stayed on with them, and so West kids are still getting on a bus and coming to Midland for after-school enrichment. I would like them not to come because I have a waiting list and I would like to get more Midland kids in. So once West has really got their feet on the ground and running, I hope they'll be able to use the allocation that you guys gave them as well so that they can get an after-school program running at the school. It's invaluable for our families. I mean, we have parents that the fact that their kids can stay at school now till 5:30 makes all the difference, not just in the parent being able to provide for their family, but you know, I gotta hold off for a second because I really care about these kids and their families, and this program makes all the difference. When we talk about improving our attendance, being able to provide this after-school program means that some dad doesn't have to come pick his kids up at lunch because he's not gonna get off work until 9 o'clock. So we keep them all day, and it's really wonderful. So in the rest of the slide presentation, you know, we talk about some of our action steps around the PLCs, for example. They're embedded into the school week. We do them during the school day. Teachers are giving up one of their planning periods to have their PLC. Because they do that, we don't do the after-school PLC. It's a trade, right? But it makes it so much easier. I go to their classroom. They have their supplies, their materials, their tests. I could sit down with them with the TLC and the coach, and we can really dig in without losing any time. And I don't have to worry about them not being able to stay after school because something comes up. Teachers are really engaging in instructional planning, but it's around using that data so that we can hopefully influence, not hopefully, I don't know why I say that anymore, so we can influence our outcomes, and we're going to. My TLC, my area instructional coach, and I are using the same common tracking coaching tool. It was brought to us last year. It's called KickUp. It's perfectly aligned for math, and we've kind of tweaked it to work for us in ELA. And that feedback from when we do those walkthroughs is immediate. Teachers get an email and they can see exactly what we said we saw and whatever question we might have. And so when that comes up on Monday and they know I'm gonna be in their PLC on Wednesday, sometimes they hold the question, sometimes they come knock on the door because they wanna know, right? Our second major improvement strategy is aligned with the district. It's really about family involvement. Midland has had a lot of success in building partnerships with the community and with some of our parents, but we need more partnerships with more of our parents, and that's really our focus this year, is creating a system of communication between teacher and parent that allows the parent to feel like they're a part of their child's journey, that they have an influence on what we're doing, that we listen to them when they tell us how their child learns best, right? In our 5E, one of the things that is pulled out is there's a student survey, a teacher survey, and that's what creates the boxes, right? But the parent survey is separate, it's not part of this, but you can go in and look at those questions and see how they've been answered. And in the 5E item, how satisfied are you with the education your child is receiving? It's gone up 14% in the last 3 years. and I don't have it in front of me and I probably should have, but the people that picked the highest one, it's above 60%. I mean, they're all in like we are, they're starting to appreciate what's happening. What else do we do around family involvement? Well, there's more action steps. We've done a survey, I've already got results of that. We've created a parent involvement calendar. My teachers have agreed to make phone or face-to-face contact with 100% of their students' parents or guardians. Every teacher has already had an individual grade parent night. We didn't do a back-to-school night where parents had to choose, I'm going to go to second grade or I'm going to go to fifth grade. We did 6 different nights. Kindergarten did a night, first grade did a night, second grade and third grade actually did theirs on the same night, but they didn't have any siblings. So they were able to do that. And that allowed parents to really have a good conversation with teachers about what's expected, what the curriculum's going to be this year. And then we have an expectation that teachers will continue to communicate with parents at least weekly. In Power School, they have a way to log those contacts. And so I can use Power School to download that and I can see how many contacts have been made by each teacher and how often. Many of the teachers have all also taken to sending a weekly newsletter so that parents know what curriculum is coming up that week. I heard you talk about homework, so I'm going to address it even though it's not here. Homework, hey, 20 minutes of reading a night is a we have to do it, right?
That's right.
So our goal this year is to read 14,115 books
I saw that.
because we're reading to the peak, type speed.
Cool.
And we're on our way, and my hope is that we're gonna take all the kids to the peak. We cannot do it in May because there's too much snow. We've talked to them, they said the best time to really come is January or February. So my goal is if we hit halfway, by halfway, the kids are gonna go to the peak in January or February. I still have field trip money because of COVID, so I get to help pay for a big chunk of that. And we have a wonderful PTA that's gonna fundraise for us, so we're gonna make that happen.
Is that gonna be on a school bus or is that gonna be on the car?
No, we're gonna go on the cause.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm worried about our yellow buses again.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't do that. If we were gonna do it that way, we'd do that company that does the vans, right? And take
Right, the bus
20
tour.
kids in each one. But some of the things we do for family involvement, the district has asked us to do, some of them are just ours. We did kindergarten jumpstart, we did a back to school barbecue, we did those grade level parent nights. We have specifically an ELL parent engagement night, where we really target getting those parents to come in. And then we have our ELL teacher who is full-time now, communicating with those families, and so we're doing everything we can to help them feel part of the community. We have an interpreter, a Spanish interpreter coming to all of our PTA meetings, so that when Spanish-speaking parents come to the PTA meeting, they're not just left out of the discussions, they get to contribute and participate.
How many languages do you have in your school?
Primarily, we are English and Spanish. I don't even have a French this year, just English and Spanish. So right now we're in good shape, but because of Power School, if there were other languages, parents can choose to receive their messages, and I don't know how many languages it is now, but it's a lot. So they can do that. Our PTA has become a real part of our school community. We've got more than 20 paid members, but any parent can be in PTA. And they don't have to pay, and we just want them there. We want to know what they think. I have actually a community member that is on my PTA, that is on my school accountability committee, and is also on DAC. So she is a Gold Hill Mesa community member, and she's been instrumental in helping us get a lot of things going that way. And then I have this other page with just a lot of pictures on it. I wanna point out the one on the far right toward the top called Wish for Wheels. And if you were in the Gazette today, you might have
Got
seen that
new bikes.
all of our second grade class
Oh,
got brand new
that
bikes and helmets yesterday. Wish for Wheels is a nonprofit with the goal of putting every second grader in a Title I school on a brand new bike. So they reached out to me and that was really an exciting thing. And all these other providers you see on here, Mobile Smiles, they come in and do oral hygiene checks on our kids. We have Diversus, ITSCO, ThriveWorks now is Diversus coming in and doing counseling in the school so that parents don't have to pull them out, go to counseling, and then bring them back, right? We save that time, so keeping kids in the classroom. These community partners are just amazing. To be a Title I school like we are, people always ask me, what do you need? And between the gift of school supplies that the district gives us every year, the gift that these community partners give us, and the help that we've gotten because of ESSER funding, right? Extra tutoring dollars and an extra half a person, the impact team, I'm having a hard time saying what I need. If I have to say one thing I need, it's that consistency for our special needs kids. I've had a hard time over the last 3 years with SPED. I've lost a teacher. I've had teachers leave in the middle of the year. And our SPED department is working so hard, but at the district level, they don't have enough people either. So if you ask me what I need, it's for the board, for HR, for everybody to come together and find a way to get some staffing for our SPED department. I haven't had a mental health professional in my school the whole time. And we're supposed to have one as part of SPED. Kids have it in their IEPs. And we can't meet those minutes. They're all compensatory. We have to make them up when we have somebody that can come in. Anyway, so
It's a challenge,
that's my plea.
No, it's a challenge that we hear not only at Midland, it seems to be throughout the district. And I would say throughout the state, throughout the country, probably that special needs requirement. What is it that we can do to attract high quality SPED teachers and SPED staff out there? The support paraprofessionals, that was one of the focal points last year. We increased their salary by almost 20% now because they have a thankless job out there. We wanted to recognize them and we provided that support, but it still falls short of what we need to do to attract high quality SPED. And that is a ongoing conversation. What is it that we can do? Whether we need to provide them extra incentives, extra supports, extra compensation, whatever it is that we need to do to attract them. When you come and say that those are the needs and that's what our students are lacking, and we got to be able to step up and meet those. So, what is it? Yeah.
I know that they have, hired contractors to come in so that we can at least be compliant. So it gets it done, but I know that contractors have got to be way more expensive than people to work for the district. So there's got to be somewhere in there between what we pay special service providers and what it costs us to bring in a contractor that we could use to bring people in. Just
Thank you for the
throwing it out
feedback.
there.
Thank you for the feedback. We will, the board will certainly keep that in ongoing discussions as we look at the budget and things of that nature going forward. And thank you also for talking about that. First of all, your passion is evident for that school and for the kids. So, when you're passionate about the work that you do, that has to translate into the classroom and the culture in the school. Thank you for the feedback about the after-school enrichment program and how that is impacting. So the way it's structured, is it 25 from Midland and 25 from West? Is that what you end up?
I have 45 kids right now, and I think about 15 of them are coming from West.
Okay.
It's
And
hard to want your kids to go on a bus to another school, so.
But you have demand in your school itself to fill the full
Yeah, they're 15.
Okay.
I could, if the West kids weren't coming, I could fill every spot with Midland kids and still have a waiting list. The other problem is just having staff to cover it, you know. I have one person who's the after-school enrichment coordinator, she's great, but then you have to pay an extra duty hour for a teacher, so you have a second person, or you pay an EA, and, not everybody wants to work extra, and finding temporary people to come in and work is, it's difficult, like as in anything else. So it's a great program, but there's more demand for it than even I can fill yet. And I won't overstock it with kids. I'm staying at a ratio of 15-1 so that it stays enrichment, so that somebody can lead activities for the kids. They're not just being babysat. They are there to do enrichment activities, and they've done everything from make rockets to tie-dye shirts to, they don't just show up every day and not have something great to do. And the district gal that helps us bring in folks that
From outside partnerships.
those
Yep.
partnerships is very helpful in getting us things set
We're
up,
talking
like
about-
with the Colorado College kids.
Great. Thank you. Again, thanks for the feedback. That was a new program that the board wanted to support starting last year. And when we put in this some of these new programs, and we set aside $1 million every year to support that at the several schools that we are talking about. Sometimes we don't know what that impact is going to be down level, if that is making the desired impact. Hearing you talk passionately about that program and that is making the desired impact, it is gratifying to know that sometimes the decisions that we make out there, we don't know the impact, and it's gratifying to know that maybe once in a while we do know what we are doing. If we hear sections of our community speak, they say we don't know what we are doing. So thanks for that. With that,
I have a question.
Yeah.
I want to ask about preschool.
Mhm.
Is it a half-day program? Is it a full-day program?
Full day,
5 days a week?
4 days a week.
4 days a week.
They don't come on, the kids don't come on Fridays. The teacher and EAs or paraprofessionals work on Fridays, and it's a preparation day, it's a cleaning day. They bleach everything. It's amazing. But yeah, those 4-year-olds are there from the same time my 5th graders arrive till they go home. It's a full day.
And so I've become aware that the families apply through the state and then the state shuffles them off to schools. Have you found any conflicts about kids who should be attending your school and for some reason they're not able? Not having to do with numbers?
Sarah Carlson she's got a magic touch or whatever. Every family that has wanted to go through Midland has had to apply through the state, but they are at Midland.
Thank
I
you.
don't have any that weren't able to get there. And, I got 3 more spots, so when they're gone, then they're gonna get put somewhere else. But I think the state needs to figure out how to take into account siblings.
That's what
If
I'm
you have
thinking.
a child at Penrose, why would you send a preschooler to a different school? Why not?
Right.
If they have a preschool, put them there with their siblings, or at least at the closest school to it.
Mhm.
Or give the district the ability to use their common sense and what they already know how to do, right? But yeah, Sarah has managed to get every kid into Midland that is asked to be there.
And a question I should have asked earlier with other elementaries. The district provides supplies for students, a basic supply of things that they'll need to be successful in their classroom. And the question becomes, do teachers, how do I want to say this? Do teachers kind of stay within the list that the list that the teachers are putting out, does it far exceed what, okay, that's the question I'm
It's-
asking.
I have teachers that don't have a supplemental list.
Okay,
They're just, everything in the box, And what we can buy out of our school budget is plenty. There are a few that have a few specific things, and it kind of has to do with the way they do things, but they're always listed as optional. And so if a family can provide them, great. If they can't, the school is gonna provide it anyway.
Yeah, I get concerned when I see those supplemental lists. It's like, wait a minute, we're already providing. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, I
well, I
think,
think if you saw ours, it was minimal.
we have two area superintendents here, maybe I think it depends from school to school. Some do ask for that supplemental list of extra supplies.
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure Brandon does.
There's two area superintendents here.
I might like that.
Just kidding. I'm sorry, I got distracted when you said that and I stopped listening to the question. The supplemental.
No, well, what I'm talking about is the school supplies that the schools get at the beginning of the year. Some schools stay within those school supplies that the schools get, and some ask parents for supplemental supplies to augment what we provide for the children. I'm talking about notebooks and whatever it is that we give in that kit.
And the concern is that, okay, so these supplies are going to be provided to all kids, so we know we're gonna get them. Oh, well then, I can ask for stuff that
Sure.
are on my wish list, and I don't know that we have provided parents with the support that we thought we were providing by giving the
If we
kids a
just ask
list.
for other stuff afterwards. Yeah, it's a very fair question. There are some supplemental lists out there. What I would say is Area Superintendent Callback, who took over the supply list last year, has acknowledged that as an issue. And even this year with the supply list was very structured with schools to say, this is what the supply list is. Now, they do still need to get a handle on some of those supplemental things. But that is kind of her part two of her strategy to make it to make sure it's not inequitable, right? To make sure that at Midland, well, they only ask for this, and then a mile up the road at West, they ask for all of these other things. So she is on top of it. She just kind of, I think, took charge of that a little too late to really address all of those things.
It's nice to know that it's being addressed, thank you.
And I will say that at least my kids' school, they say that if you struggle to provide this for your child, let us know. Like, if the family isn't able to afford purchasing those extra items, then the school will come in and support.
Thank you. Melissa, if you can go back to slide 11 of 16, and I'm coming to you, Dr. K. So, I mean, I know that looking at the 5E data, one more, 10, go back to the previous one. Yes, there you go. You've said over and over again with the 5 essentials data, when it's like, what is it, 3 out of 5 is green or whatever it is, that translates into, you finish that sentence. When 3 or 5 is green, what does that mean?
Yeah, so you have 10 times greater likelihood of significant improvement in math and.
Yeah, so something here is not correlating out here. You have 4 greens out there, and then you have CMAS, I mean the STAR data, which shows phenomenal growth, but it's not correlating with the CMAS data. What is going on?
Yeah.
Why is it that it seems like Midland is the anomaly out there?
Yeah, so I would propose that this is correlating pretty strongly with STAR, where we saw that massive growth and we saw that strong performance. If you go back to the SPF for Midland, Karen was pointing out kind of the sequence. It's really a series of unfortunate events coming out of COVID. Because if you take a look at the academic growth section,
Can you make
you
it a little bit
see
bigger?
the count. I don't know if there's.
I don't think we have that.
Yeah, we don't have the
page.
growth section.
It's 32
It's
students.
32 students. So conceptualize that as 60% of your SPF is being calculated on one classroom in a typical school. 32 students calculated that growth, and growth accounts for 60% of an elementary's SPF.
Wow.
The reason that happened is because COVID, chaos. Then we had 1 year, it was frozen, and then we had that 1 year where we had alternate year testing. So that created these tiny samples for every school.
Right.
Right, because we had fourth grade math. That's the only math that was tested in an elementary school, so you were calculating growth on one classroom. That was across the board, across the state, right? So then go 1 year forward, as Karen pointed out, insufficient data for calculations last year for Midland. So Midland was still stuck in that right after COVID condition, where one classroom was being calculated for the 60% of the SPF.
Mhm.
And that's why then it was so low compared to STAR, which calculates growth on a massive scale. Right.
Mm.
Calculating growth. So remember, growth calculations are pooling like students together and then looking at how their scores are changing. So STAR has 1 million plus data points to pull that from. And it's a very strong correlation generally to a situation where you have more than one classroom being calculated. What happened then was Midland's growth when put in that national scale showed amazing MGPs of 60, 61. When it was looking at one individual classroom of 32 students, it dropped. That puts intense mathematical pressure on a very small group of students and teachers. So the big question that explains why the huge difference. The bigger question is, what are we going to do about it to avoid this in the future?
Well, and what are we measuring this year to be ready for?
Right, so this year now on CMAS, because it was Midland is always going to have intense pressure because of that smaller sample, always. So we just deal with it. Now, this next year though, Midland will have the full sample of tested students to calculate growth into next time, so it should be, with the few that get dropped at the very end, it should be almost the full sample. But it's Midland, so we still have that to watch, but it won't be as intense as it was this past year. So does the logic make sense of why we had 32 students calculating 60% of the SPF? Does that make sense? Okay. So the bigger question is, what are we going to do about it? So we're going to hold that. We're going to continue to use STAR across the district. I asked CDE about this, I asked STAR about this, I asked STAR again, I asked CDE again. So they sent me their national results, and you heard our correlation was about 0.76 in ELA, 0.73 or so in math. And it's right there with STAR. So it is a valid tool. Our findings are right in line with national STAR findings. So how we can kind of manage this is we can look at what STAR is reporting, but I can take and at the student level run some correlations and different things and create to some degree a correction factor that we can add or subtract. In this case, it'll probably be a subtract from the STAR findings, so that we can kind of get closer to what the SPF might say. Over the years, we'll be able to fine tune that a little bit more, but now that we know exactly what we're looking at, and we have other schools that are in a similar boat, not as intense as Midland is, but in a similar boat that we'll be able to add some of those correction factors for. So we'll be doing that, and then just kind of looking at that and monitoring that again, so we don't have that huge discrepancy that we saw this year.
So this has to be something that happens like a lot to rural schools and things like that. This is a small school, you have small schools in rural. I mean, I'm just surprised the CDE doesn't recognize like, oh, for a school this size and under, we maybe need to make some adjustments or take into account the number of students in the school.
Yeah, I asked that question and I got kind of a mediocre answer, but I'm going to continue to ask it because I'm on this accountability working group that's looking at how these are being calculated. And we're actually going through it got delayed because of COVID, but they're going through an audit of how it's being calculated and is it landing us where we want it to be. So that'll be an ongoing conversation. Because you're exactly right. I mean, Ordway, right?
Yeah.
Thriving metropolis, and she just went through my hometown. Drove right by, well, not right by my house, but anyway. Yeah, the rural districts do.
Yeah, they would have a similar issue, I would imagine.
They could go back to the multi-year plan.
Yeah.
There used to be a 3-year SPF and a 1-year SPF.
Mm.
And so it takes out
Yeah.
the air factor a little bit when it's over a longer period of time.
And that's what we're gonna be looking at, is creating a little bit more of a broad option for looking at multi-year SPFs. When in a situation like this where a school within a large district is suffering for having a small sample, so.
Well, with the smaller sample size, looking at it from the other perspective, we would be able to target student by student and be able to pull them up rather quickly. So this could be a school that, fingers crossed, year from now, you are the
Small sample
ones.
can help us both ways.
Yeah, you are the
That's
one
right.
that jumps to performance level next year, no
Yep.
pressure. Okay, come back here
Oh,
and
yeah.
performance, and we are celebrating
That's
you.
where we should be.
Yeah,
President
You-
Malpacum, Tamara Acevedo has her hand up.
oh, okay. Ms. Acevedo? Do you have? Go ahead, Ms. Acevedo. Okay, there you go. Thanks for joining us. And be able to-
Absolutely. I just,
So this could be a
you know,
school that.
in what, the
Year
principal
from now,
brought up
you are the
earlier,
ones.
connected,
Yeah,
David, and
you
I
are
don't
the
know, I
one
might have
that
missed
jumps
that.
to
Is it
performance level next year, no pressure.
related to the fact
Okay,
that
come back
our
here and
STAR
performance,
growth
and we
data
are celebrating
includes,
you.
or,
Yeah.
student median percentile or growth median percentile
Oh,
includes
okay.
their grade?
Ms. Acevedo?
Is that also a factor, whereas the state
Do you have-
includes fourth and fifth, or did
Go
I
ahead,
get
Ms. Acevedo.
get that wrong?
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, that would
Thanks
be
for
a
joining us.
factor that I really hadn't
Absolutely,
put in, because our STAR data.
Last year was only calculating from fall to spring. This year we'll be able to calculate from fall to fall, spring to spring, you know, whatever. But because last year was our first year, fall was our first testing period. So it was calculating growth for third grade too, which would just exacerbate the sample size.
Yeah, but also it would tell you, I think, and David, you can please correct me if I'm not thinking of this in the correct way. Specifically for Midland, because their STAR growth data was, what did we say, right around 61, right? We would assume that they had some strong growth there also in third grade, which will be this year's fourth graders moving. And so there's positives in last year's data that we could potentially see play out next year. It should continue the pattern, I think. And David, you can please correct me.
Great, thank you. Any further thoughts of Director Jurgens?
Director Roth, did you want to go first?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So
Good luck.
I remember, well, first off, I remember teaching with you down in District 2 as an AP way back when. But I remember being elected in 2019 and seeing you here right before the pandemic hit and approving your USIP there. And then, you know, getting the 5E data, and then that Director Malpacum, you know, spoke to the 5E data. I mean, when I was looking at that reviewing for this USIP work session, I was just like, oh man, we are so close, like we are there. And then for you to say tonight, we didn't have any loss of staff. I see Naomi over here. You know, you got a great solid team that is all bought in. And I really do, I'm an optimist by nature, but I'll be positively optimistic in saying that I really do think that, you know, it's a double-edged sword and we can make it work to our advantage. You have all the other factors that are there and they're already in place. And so I do think because you hit the ground running this year, I'm very excited to see your results as we're monitoring things throughout the year, but I'm very excited to see, you know, how you do. Whether I'm here or not, as a board member, I'm excited to see where you go, because I mean, you should be there. So doesn't mean we sit on our laurels, obviously, and you know that, because you've been working your tail off trying to get everything. But you know, between what the board's offering, you know, that we approved in the budget stuff, wraparound stuff, I'm very excited that you're poised for a great year, putting the work in. So
The other thing is you get to stay in that one building as opposed to.
that was my other thought,
Yeah.
and it's another added value add that you're not having to split your time between two schools and staff. I mean, you are now just a Midland principal, all your energy there with that crew and that culture. I think that's going to pay dividends as well. So.
You're done? I think Director Roth.
I did actually have one question that came to mind when you mentioned this staff has come back this year in the vast majority. how many of the staff that you have now, back this year, were there when you first came onto the team, as it were, when you first went to Midland?
So we put you on the clock now, so now.
I'm calculating in my head, which grade levels I still have, which specials I still have, so. 3.
3 of them are the same? Or,
3 are the same.
Out of how many?
6, 10 specials. Certified staff, not counting counselors, just teaching staff, I'm gonna say there's probably about 12.
thanks.
So when did you start as the principal there, and West, you were splitting your time the whole time, is that right?
The
That
fall
happened,
of,
yeah.
the fall of 2020 is when I started at Midland and West, both places.
And
And
did,
before that, you were only at.
Only at West.
oh, okay, so you were at West and then you took on Midland, I'm just trying to get history.
Right, yeah, I had 6.5 years at West Elementary. West Elementary was turnaround when I took over, we moved to improvement, we dropped to priority improvement, got stuck, and now they're performance.
Yeah, that's exciting, you
Yeah,
said
I
that
was
was the
excited,
first
but
time.
you know what, the 5E at West looked like this one does now. And I wish for the new principal that it continues, but it's hard when you change, when you change leadership. So, Ron has his work cut out for him with new staff and, you have to rebuild.
Yeah.
But I'm excited not to have to do that and to get the opportunity to help Midland grow. It's my home school, I live in the community. I now know all my kids and every car they get into every day, and it's wonderful to be a part of that.
And did you say that was the first time West has reached performance?
Yes,
Like ever?
ever.
Wow.
I think the school has been there about 13 years,
Wow.
from when they closed Washington and Whittier.
Okay, well, kudos to you for helping them get there.
So you know how it's done.
I do.
So I have one.
And that's why I know we're gonna get there, we're on that path.
Well, and that's what my comment is, just everything that you have in place in this presentation are all the right things. I mean, it just seems like you're on track, your 5E data shows you're gonna get there. I really believe it. And I love one of the things that you're doing of that common tracking and coaching tool, like that sounds like something maybe that is really going to benefit you and your staff, and maybe we spread it across the district,
Yeah, we have, so Midland and West were actually our pilot for that last year.
Okay.
Because really, they have an instructional coach and they have a small staff, and we said, wow, this can be a great model for what instructional coaching can look like. And so they really bought into it. It is scaling to the rest of the district right now.
Oh, okay.
It's scaling slowly,
Sure.
but it is available to all of the areas. It was a purchase through Ms. Acevedo's department. And it's a tool that, we were having conversations about inter-rater reliability. It really allows that, because what we saw at Midland and West last year is you have a lot of adults not in the school coming to the school to help, and all looking at different things, all talking differently. And so we had to kind of bring coherence to that. And so I think the staff at both West and Midland, but specifically Midland, found a lot of value, and so I think it's gonna be really beneficial for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. You
I
also
think you
were
were
a
wearing
pilot.
your area superintendent hat.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Thank you for the explanation. You are also a pilot for Reachwell, right? And so how's that going? And
It's going great.
why the hesitation?
We're working on it. And, you can say what you need to say.
What we love about Reachwell is the ability for that two-way communication between parent and teacher by like text message. Because a teacher can send a message to the whole class, and a parent can have a question and just send a text back, and the teacher gets an email saying that it's there immediately. Or if they're walking around with the app, they can get it on their phone too. The teachers love it, the parents love it, having it on their phone and just being able to check it anytime.
So her hesitation on that, and the reason she looked at me is because one of the things we're finding with Reach Well and all of the other communications we have in the district, the loop and we're trying to consolidate and be consistent. So, we're moving into streamlining that whole process, and where does Reach Well fit into that equation is kind of what we're processing right now.
Yeah, too much tech, even though everything, that's my thing with my work, is there's so much fintech out there, you get overwhelmed with all the cool tech, but a lot of it can be useless if you don't put it all together. So integrating, okay, this is what, this is for mobile users, this is for, email, this is for, and that can be overwhelming. And
I agree. We agreed to try piloting it. It seems like our parents like it. We have the same abilities in Power School. They're just a little harder for parents to get tapped into.
But and Reachwell has the translation piece to it, correct?
Yeah, you choose what language you want to receive the message in, and that's just the way it comes.
Yeah.
But the teacher we don't have to have somebody translate it to Spanish, it's automatic.
Yeah. So you mentioned having the loss of the IB program. I don't know the history to that.
The year that I came to Midland, our superintendent at that time did not feel that the primary years program was a benefit for base cost benefit, what it cost versus what we got out of it. But we did see a huge decline in enrollment, and so I can blame IB, I can also blame COVID. We lost a lot of kids.
It was back in that same time.
It was right in that same time frame.
Thank you.
It's great that you also talked about the dyslexia supports that you have on the Take Flight program. We heard from a parent last week about that supports. I think that was at Hubbard, but you have that.
Yeah, we're not one of the designated sites,
Yeah.
but I actually have on staff a certified therapist that is one of our interventionists. And
That's
then I have another, my ESSER reading teacher that is going through the program to become that. So we're able to provide it even without being kind of the dyslexia, I don't know what they called it. It's not magnet, but something like that for area school or something.
That's great.
Okay. Anything specific to thing? I think Ms. Acevedo said that she wants to wrap up everything on this USIP. Ms. Acevedo, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Just sort of a culminating comment based on superintendent and I, a conversation that we had going through and with the whole leadership team, the executive cabinet, looking at our plans and preparing for these conversations as well. And I think that Director Nelson, when you speak to Midland's Karen's specific strategic plans, that I think your language looks like you're doing all the right things. And I think Karen is a very intentional leader, and she is very focused on the right things. And I think, and I believe, and I know that it's exactly how our superintendent was describing it to me. That we are in our second year of a multi-year plan. It's a repeat of our focus from last year, but in the superintendent's words, we're doubling down. We're doubling down on best first instruction. So that has not changed. And so we, for us, that's rigorous instruction, planning, and student engagement, all center around that. It's exactly how our superintendent was describing
the systems and structures that we're putting in place to have coherence in that best first instruction.
A multi-year plan.
With that, the areas we focused on, and you've seen it embedded in the presentations tonight, but the systems of accountability and support with our area network model, and then tiering of support within that. So when Karen talks about the impact Teams work or through UVA, or tonight you had
systems and structures
Aaron
that
from
we
Audubon
are
talk about the
expected
to have
here,
coherence and
empowerment,
empowerment strategy. That's
multi-year
in
plan
with
is
that
systems of
the
accountability
areas
and
of
support
support through
but
the area
the
model.
superintendent's
Embedded in
just
presentations tonight, differentiated by level of need. Cascading professional learning, and then again, our one plan strategic plans, our continuous improvement plan cycles that you've seen. So I just wanted to recognize that you'll see each of the plans that were given tonight had some variations to meet the very specific needs within our schools, but they have all the right things focused on the strategies that we're doing as a district and doubling down on those areas of support through the area model.
Thank you so much. And with that, thank you all, Area Superintendent Smith, and then we also had the other two area superintendent principals, all of you coming and making this presentation. I'm cautiously optimistic that all these 4 schools can get out of this priority improvement status next year. 3 of them are really close, and then when you talk about the sample size and how you can use that to your benefit. So the goal next year is to cut 8 to 4, and maybe we got the 4 schools here that we are talking about, and we got to listen to the other 4 or 5 presentations that we have next week, that in the coming week. So thank you, and good luck, and keep let us know how it progresses throughout. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. I think these will move a little bit faster. We should be wrapped up hopefully in the next 15 minutes. This is the Board of Education and District SMART Goals. I think this came up last week at the board meeting. At the very end of it, Director Nelson brought up where she wanted to make it a little bit more tight with the goals that are specific, and she's worked on it, ran it by Dr. Kalaki, I think, and the admin. I'll let you take the floor and explain to the board what is it. Do you want to look at the initial goals first, or do you want to look at the?
Sure, pull up the initial goals, the
Okay.
top one. Thanks, Melissa. So when you look at these, I realize they include the how. You know, it says like through the application of these things, or it lists out what our superintendent will be doing to make the goal happen, and that's not really SMART format. And I also think we should have it be a much higher level so that he has flexibility in how he wants to make these goals be accomplished. So that was the initial thought with just making the goals themselves in the SMART format: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And then as I was looking more closely at them, I am proposing to you all that instead of focusing, for example, on reducing dropout rates, that we focus on literacy, and thereby dropout rates will come down. Make sure I say that the right direction. That there will be repercussions of focusing on specific categories rather than say if we focus on reducing dropout rates, well, what does that incentivize? Does that mean we're gonna start focusing on making school more fun or cool so that kids wanna be there, which is, we want to absolutely have that be a piece to the puzzle, but then the learning isn't as much of the focus. So I'm hoping that we can shift a little to having our goals be more on the learning focus. And so I'm proposing this literacy goal, and it being K through 12 instead of having like a 3rd grade ELA goal, and then, you know, let's have it be high level. I'm bringing this really high level. So that's the literacy goal. And then based on the CMAS data that we reviewed at our last work session, and seeing that we have larger gaps in the free and reduced lunch subgroup. I am proposing that we have that be our focus for a subgroup goal. And knowing that it is going to be a challenge that all students receive free lunch now, and we're still figuring out how we're gonna track these students, but the state will still be tracking them, and so I think we need to figure it out. They're gonna have to figure it out, and so let's get ahead of it and see if we can raise our FRL subgroup scores. And I think when I was speaking with Dr. Colicky, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that that subgroup also factors into our school performance framework numbers. And so that just then is another good reason for us to focus on that. And I know that if we focus on this category, it will bring up the other subgroups as well. There will be a trickle effect, and I think we'll actually be targeting more students this way. And then the K through 12 accreditation goal is the same as what we had before, other than I pulled out the how. And then I was just reflecting on my initial ask that we recognize the 5 essentials data that showed that students and teachers aren't feeling safe in our schools due to behavior and discipline, and that includes like the bathrooms, the hallways, not in the classrooms, what's happening. We hear a lot of just anecdotal stories of teachers being cussed out or hit, or students and their peers and not having that respect within the learning environments. And so I just wanted to come back with, can we still have this somehow be a focus for us, that we have the 5E data, we have the qualitative data that we hear from our schools and we hear across the nation. So that's where then I came up with this safety goal with Dr. Colicky's support to make sure I had the language correct on how the 5E speaks to this, and then what the correct measurement, it's not a percentage necessarily, but scale score points. So you guys have any questions?
Okay, questions or feedback on where it is? I think she's pulled it up a little bit higher, tighter, focusing more on literacy, and that impact will trickle down to every other core subject. Feedback.
Sounds accurate.
Okay. Any other feedback?
I was curious why you lowered the minimums that
From
we were looking.
5% to 3%.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And that was actually Dr. K's guidance, so I don't know if you want to speak to that.
So from our growth this year, so I was looking at historical data, we had a pretty banner year, and over the district it was 2%. So again, opposite thing of Midland, at a big sample size, it's hard to get those percentage growths. So certainly we would shoot for as high as we can get, but this is still an aspirational goal while still being realistic, attainable. Yeah, we'll have to get that across the district. We will have some huge growth at the different school levels to keep that, to grow that and maintain that.
So 5% is aspirational and highly unlikely.
Pretty unlikely.
But 3% is achievable.
And there's a fine line
It's still aspirational.
with like wanting to push us and make progress, but not having a goal that is probably not attainable, and then morale just sinks because we didn't get there. So there is kind of a fine line. I absolutely want us to be pushing and moving forward, and seeing kind of what you were saying earlier about that adult behavior change, so that we see outcomes for students increasing and what's going to drive that. So that's where, your Dr. Colicky recommended, this is probably more of a realistic, not morale sinking goal.
Yeah, and if we hit 4 or 5, it's additional celebration.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But 3% growth at a district level be very significant growth still.
And then my thought is with those other SMART goals that the administration team presented to us that are more at a in the weeds level or more detailed level, they can still have those goals, like absolutely.
My school,
This, and you know, the superintendent can still be focused on third grade or whatever to help achieve this overall literacy goal. But I really wanted this to be, like I said, a higher level and for the district as a whole. These aren't the board's SMART goals. This is, we're a team, we're all in this together, and this is now just as a district, we're gonna focus on literacy, we're gonna focus on this free and reduced lunch subgroup, and we're gonna focus on safety. And then we'll see that carry over into the accreditation when we achieve all of that.
All right, I'll throw in a couple more observations. I think, I guess you are interested in addressing the free and reduced lunch numbers. When I look at the minority numbers, it's a scandal. And so to remove those and substitute, I don't really agree with that. Would it be an issue to list all three subgroups?
The idea is to have 5 or less. When you start getting into, I wanted actually to have 3. That was my personal goal, but we're at 4. When you start having so many goals, when you focus on so many things, then you're not really focusing on anything. And I hear you, it's a scandal. The reason I shifted to free and reduced lunch is because those gaps are actually bigger when we look at that data. So my thought was, let's focus on where the biggest gaps are, and then it will impact those other subgroups as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, some of our subgroups that are minority subgroups are also in the free and reduced lunch bucket, you know, along with then a few other, you know, demographics. So I think it hits on more needs and covers more needs while also addressing the subgroups. And I think we could go all the way back to the equity audit data we had back from 2020 that showed the similar thing. It was, you know, your subgroups, yes, but also your free and reduced, your poverty piece is a huge.
My recollection from the equity audit was that race matters. And if we're not addressing that, it's not just about poverty levels. So we might have to revisit that if this board would be willing. You know, fine, we could do free and reduced lunch, but when there is more to it, I believe, is what the equity audit showed.
And the thing, what I hear is, even though these are overarching goals, it's not that we are not going to look at the subgroups. I think the district is going to still be tracking the subgroups. The district is also going to be reporting the subgroups to us. And if, like for example, we don't say anything about math out here, it's focus on literacy, but even though the focus on literacy doesn't mean that we are ignoring math completely. The hope is that, or the, you know, not even hope, but use a stronger word to fill out there. The expectation is that there is going to be growth in math too, and that is going to be reported in a periodic manner to the board too. It's not that we are ignoring math. And the same thing, I don't think we are ignoring the subgroups out there. The SPED subgroups is another population where you see significant gaps out there that we need to address. So I think from what you are saying, Director Nelson, addressing that free and reduced lunch, you are going to see that trickle down into various the other things. And the feedback to you, Dr. K, is that, and to Superintendent Gall, to take that feedback would be that we do want to know that subgroup, you know, reporting when it comes in front of the board.
And I would ask that if the board adopts this, when we're looking at like the school data, I noticed some of the schools did provide the FRL numbers, some of them provided the minority numbers, and so if we could get both, that would be nice to have and just keeping.
Yeah, I think it's wise to report on and monitor the subgroups that we're being graded on, if you will. So this IEP, it's not ELL anymore. CDE still calls it ELL.
CLD.
Yeah, CLE, thank you. And then,
Yeah, and speaking to that of what the CDE still calls it, that's why I named it free and reduced lunch subgroup, because that's what CDE calls it.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Gall was using a different language, but I wanted to align it with the CDE language, since that's what we're all familiar with, and if they change it, then we'll change it. Was
yeah,
my
I
thought.
think it will change. Economic disadvantage is kind of where it's going right now.
Okay.
So, yeah, but it's just nomenclature.
Are we,
Especially when I think about several of the schools that presented to me were Title I schools, and they have that high free and reduced lunch population, so it would have been really interesting to see that data.
And they get the extra support for that
Yeah,
FRL.
Right.
So you're kind of tracking the double dip of that plus is,
Yeah.
makes sense.
To a couple points, it is the biggest net. It's the biggest net of tracking, because it'll encompass all those groups to a pretty significant degree.
All the more reason.
more students.
So I'm having trouble aligning the SMART goals with our board priorities and what we've set out for the superintendent. Can you align these for me?
Well, so I see the board priorities as being ultra high level. Student success, staff investment. The idea of a SMART goal is that you have a date that you're trying to hit something by. And so it really is more of an accountability piece.
For whom?
All of us, the board, the
Isn't
district,
that what we did
staff.
with the superintendent's goals that we've set?
So if you're
some of it
referring-
kind of.
What letter answer?
go ahead.
If you're referring to what the superintendent presented as his mid-year performance plan, and he had some goals in there, is that what you're referring to? I see this as just, he has it more at that detailed level, that lower level, and this is like he came up with those himself, and that's great, and maybe we wanna adopt those. But this is kind of, as a board, we're saying, this is where we want our focus. My battery's about to die on my computer, but this is where we want the district to focus. This is where we want you to focus, Mr. Superintendent. And these are the areas, and it's great you have all these other goals that you're trying to achieve. They will help support these higher level ones. And I have spoken quite often, or not quite often, but in depth with Mr. Gall about this, and he is very excited that I'm trying to bring it really high level, and that we would, as a board, say, we're gonna focus on literacy. Like, this is what we see as important, this is what's gonna help improve outcomes for kids on all the other, math, science, all the other things as well. And so for us to not be so down in the weeds of like third grade scores,
Literacy, yeah.
he appreciates this higher level coming from us.
So from this, if this was adopted by the board, the next steps would be for the superintendent to come back and say, this is the action plan?
I would assume so, that then we would task him with, okay, now can you come back to us with what you anticipate your how will be to meet these goals?
Which some of that was in the first iteration of this, right?
Yes.
And just to piggyback on what you said, these are priorities, but there's no
You
metrics.
need to turn around, yeah, so I can hear you.
These are priorities, but there's no metrics to it that says, here's what we're laser focused on.
By a
And
certain date.
by a certain date. So it's like, this is great, and most of us have signed our name to it, and we speak about it. Here's where we're telling our community and our stakeholders and our constituents and saying, look, we've identified the areas that we are lacking in, that we've heard from our community needs to be addressed. And so now, as a board and admin and then trickle down, cascade down, this is what we want to see results in. Because how many times do we see boards come through and circle through and change and we all talk about stuff, but then we still see stuff remain the same. We're finally now saying, we're talking about it, and now we're being about it. And community and buildings and parents we're knowing what we lack in and what we want to improve. We're going to have the metrics behind it and hold us accountable, because this is what we should be talking about. It's, we're on the board and we're talking about how to influence the community. There's a lot of pleasantries that go around in celebrations, which are wonderful, but when we've got the statistics that we have and we're not taking time to address it and focusing on, making it a point to improve it, then something has to change. And I think that we're finally there where we're saying, here's our goals. We want to make this better. And we're not just gonna say, hey, we got our plan and let's go team, but specifically 3% here, 2% here, this 5E data from this to this. We are saying measure us, hold us to it. So that's how I look at it.
And to me, it just adds another layer is where I'm looking at it.
Like as a good thing or a bad thing?
Neither or.
Okay.
I
Just
also
another layer.
see it as a tool to help us in making decisions, like when it comes to the budget or ESSER money running out, and we have Take Flight, for example, with dyslexia that's currently funded through ESSER. Well, if literacy is our goal, we're gonna figure out a way to fund that through the general fund, and that might mean that there's some other program in ESSER that isn't as literacy focused, that then we realize we're gonna let that one go. I think it's really gonna help us make those decisions in the future that are gonna be really hard, but it's gonna keep us focused on what is, at the end of the day.
The main thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, by this date, we've said we're gonna achieve this as a district. We're gonna have 45% of students reading at grade level in 3 years. What decisions are actually gonna get us there when we're having to figure out dollars and policy, curriculum, I think it's really gonna just help keep us focused.
It's a lens through which you can view things. I see that. That's a good point.
So when we developed those priorities up there was metrics attached with it, but the metrics was so large. It was like, each had like, I think I worked with Dr. K when we developed those metrics. It became like,
There's
what
a
are you going to focus on? Okay, then when you put so many metrics out there, then you
You're
may as well,
spread thin.
not put anything. I think this brings a little bit of focus into it. We established some things in the superintendent's evaluation too, communication being one of the things that we wanted to see improve. And those things will still be there when we evaluate the superintendent at the end of the year. We want to make sure that the feedback that we gave to him aligns with that. So this helps us.
The evaluation piece on this then is if we don't reach our 3% minimum, how do we self-assess and say, oh, we didn't put enough money to this dyslexic program? Or, gee, we now put in this wonderful athletic field up at Coronado, but it doesn't have any bleachers. And how can we have a full program? I mean, I can just see this as being a huge conversation without achieving what we put into what we've asked the superintendent to do. I look at this and go, okay, so we didn't achieve 3% on the statewide assessments. We've already gotten the information from all of the folks who have come to us, and as we've looked at them and we've devoted money to them, how do we hold ourselves accountable?
Well, we can't if we don't have any kind of a goal.
If we have a goal of 3% and we don't reach our goal, how do we hold ourselves accountable?
Well, I think that's the reflection piece.
If a school, so a school comes with their plan. These are the steps that they're going to accomplish. They're looking at the 5 E's, and there's statistical relevance in if you get, 3 out of the 5 you're gonna raise, and if you have growth, that if it's, I think you said 65 to 70% growth, you will raise achievement levels. Those to me are real definable. A 3% on a statewide assessment is so broad, and you're right, it's at that higher level. I don't see how that changes our decision making. I'm just not seeing it. I'm not voting yes or no at this point. I'm just trying to figure out how this all comes together to something that's meaningful other than more language.
So I guess we all know that we want all of our schools to be at performance and that they have to, some of our schools are needing to move and get that 60%, 70% growth like you mentioned. So to your point, it could just be it goes without being said. We don't need to put it on paper. This is just a way of putting on paper, we're putting a stake in the ground that we're gonna move the district from 36% to 40 in 3 years.
45.
Or 45, sorry. It died, I can't reach the plugin. So it's just, you know, has the district moved that much ever? I don't think so. I don't know that previous boards have ever strived or made that like
Made it clear where we are and where we wanna
clear goal.
go.
This is where we're headed. And so this is just a way to like focus all of the team. We're in on literacy. We're gonna get to 40% of kids reading at grade level in 3 years. 45, sorry.
And we may fall short of the goal, but it's again, shoot for the stars, and if you land on the moon because of the focus, we're still trending in the right direction. Just because we put 3% and next year it's 2%, it's the same as some of the schools that came here. Some of the schools that came here said last year that they are not going to come back this year, but yet we saw them here again this year. So they fell a little bit short of the mark, but they were progressing in the right direction, and now they are 0.5 or 0.9 away.
I understand, and you've said it well, and you've said it several different ways. I'm just not at a point where I can say that this is going to be some sort of a guidance that says it's going to help us make decisions as we go through budget. And I don't see it. You see it, I don't see it. We'll just have to keep working at it.
Yeah, it might help to have some one-on-one conversations.
Okay.
If you have
Yeah,
questions.
it may be a conversation with Mr. Gall, cause he's the one that's gonna do the how. Maybe it would help for you to hear from him that this helps him set his direction and then he'll attack his
The will of the
how.
board, right? Hey, this is what the board wants to focus on, 4 things: safety, accreditation, you know, our subgroup data, and our literacy.
And first, we can just keep this going.
Sure.
Yeah, let's just
We'll get
stop
together.
where we are.
So the last thing that you said, like maybe a conversation with Superintendent Gall will help close that gap a little bit. So previously, what we discussed collectively as a board is that we don't need to formally adopt this, that if you give me a thumbs up that this can be posted on board docs, is that the direction that you guys would still like to go? Or would you prefer this coming as an action item where the board formally adopts it from the board dais?
Say that again? A thumbs up does what?
We just said previously when I talked about it, when this was initially presented, that we don't need to formally adopt it as an action item, that we would just if the board's will is by a thumbs up that this is good, that then this can be posted for public on the board website for us to track at the end of the year and going forth. Would you prefer to keep it at that level, or do you want to formally adopt it at this? And you said, okay, go ahead.
I like the idea of formally adopting it.
Okay.
Like we're serious about this.
Okay.
And that it makes it more known, I think, to the team. And it will come out then in the board brief.
Okay,
Debrief
perfect.
to staff of like, oh,
Yep.
they adopted some SMART goals and this is where their focus is.
Any other thoughts on that? We heard from Director Nelson, any other,
No.
Director Art, go ahead.
I'm fine with either. I don't need it to be formally adopted to point out that improvement has always been a goal, and, naming these specifically is, I'm fine with doing it too, though.
Okay,
I do have another concern, though, regarding the one that says on the older version regarding high school dropout and graduation rates. I don't want to let that one go. If we make school more fun, i.e. more engaging for our high school students, through best first instruction, through the engagement that ideally is being poured into them, it matters. And I don't think people are any more inclined to cheat the system than they are to cheat the system with anything else. So with the belief in the professionalism and the dedication that our staff have and that our superintendent and we should have, I think we should keep that one.
So I will say that my thought was, I would love to see the data on this actually. Our students that drop out, where are they at? What does their CMAS data look like? I'm gonna make an assumption that they probably aren't grade level reading. So I think it's a really safe bet to make that if we focus on literacy at all grade levels, like those kids that are in 10th grade and they're only reading at 6th grade level, we're gonna just get them there, then they won't drop out because they will be engaged. They'll feel like they're capable because they're actually able to read at grade level, which is going to trickle over into the other, like I said, math, science, other things. So it's not that we're not focusing on dropout rates, it's we're doing it by focusing on literacy.
I think that probably plays a significant part, but
I can't hear you.
I imagine that does play a significant part, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. And so I just want to keep it. And we can drop the first part, but to me, dropout rate, graduation rates, they're significant and I want to see them kept, so.
And as we've learned, and when folks came to talk to us, dropout rate is not as clear cut as it seems to be. We saw one slide that somebody presented to us where the dropout rate was 4% or some really small number. And it turns out when we're looking at our students who are, I am freezing, is anybody else cold?
I'm freezing too.
When we're looking at dropout rates and we're taking into consideration our schools of opportunity, who have a longer period of time in which to talk about kids being enrolled in school, then we then talk about not kids necessarily graduating on time at 12th grade. And that dropout rate and graduation rate are a little more complex than how many kids started in 9th grade and how many kids finished at 12th. How many kids have taken the opportunity to go on and take a little longer to finish? How many kids have just disappeared out of our rolls and we don't know where they are? Did they drop out? We don't know. They may be enrolled in another school someplace else. They've just never asked for transcripts. So that whole conversation around improving dropout rates or graduation rates then becomes how are we going to define what we consider to be a dropout? How do we better define graduation? How do we communicate to our public that graduation doesn't necessarily happen in 4 years? And that communication is not going out because people, me, we look at graduation rate and think, well, these are the kids who started high school, these are the kids who finished.
4 years.
In 4 years. And to go beyond that, it's beyond folks' interest because they're used to what they're used to.
Right.
So I would like to see a lot more conversation around what is, if we're going to put in dropout rates and hold ourselves accountable to that, then I think we need to have that definition of somewhere inserted so that folks understand that kids or transcripts or information sometimes just gets lost in the atmosphere. And it's not that we failed our kids. It's not that school wasn't engaging. It's not that whatever else might come up. Oh, thank you. Gosh, I think the temperature just dropped like 10 degrees. And now you're cold.
I'll be fine.
I don't want to put ourselves in a position where it sounds like, and when we look in the newspaper, it looks like District 11 has what, a 60%, 70% graduation rate, and you look at other districts and theirs are higher. Maybe the kids who are in those schools have a better sense of filling out the paperwork and asking for transcripts and so forth. I'm not so sure that in District 11 that we are disserving our kids with the number of kids that, with the numbers that are counted as students who do not finish their high school education here in District 11. It puts us in a light that says we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We are doing what we're supposed to be doing. You look at all the programs, you look at all the opportunity, you look at the lengths at which people go, staff members, community members go in order to make sure that we hold on to our kids and we give them the skills that enable them to go out and make an adult life for themselves. So what I'm trying to get to is graduation rate, I think is important. I think that graduation rate and dropout rate, when we first were onboarded, the number was at 600. 600 kids drop out. And I have a difficult time with the fact that every year there's 600 kids that are not finishing. There are 600 kids who somehow have not gotten that piece of paper, whether it's a GED, whether it is a high school diploma, but there's 600 kids. And to your point about not being able to read, and we've heard Al Loma say how many times that the folks that he serves through his church can't read. But it's not necessarily true that if folks learn how to read and get through school, that they're also going to graduate. We have some really high-performing kids who don't want to come to school, who want to go do other things. Point being, if we're going to include graduation and dropout rates, which I think is important, we need to put it into language or put it into some sort of a metric that takes into account that we always don't have the information that we need in order to be able to say, yes, this child has definitely dropped out, or this child has, easy, graduation is easy, they've graduated, but did they graduate on time? And is that part of the calculation that is made through CDE? And if you talk to folks at the Opportunity, a couple of folks at the Opportunity School at Wasson, I've heard it said that they would like to have a different category for the kids that they serve, and so they can count them as graduating on time, although that time may be more than 4 years. I would love to be able to recount that conversation, those conversations. I've had 2 of them accurately, and I can't at this point, but I'll go back and ask again and see what we can do about giving District 11 the credit it deserves for serving our kids to a point where they graduate and they can walk away with skills.
Okay.
And I'll stop talking.
Go ahead.
So I just will ask a rhetorical question of why are we concerned about kids dropping out? And it's because then they're no longer learning and getting the skills they need to provide for themselves and their families in the future. So my intention with these goals is for us to be hyper-focused on the learning piece that I think will then, like I said, it will help with the dropout rates. And just in conversation, Mr. Gall's not here to speak for himself, but in conversation with him, he did share with me that dropout rates are a complicated matter, to your point. And so maybe just follow up from him to weigh in on this conversation might be helpful, so.
If I can, it's a pretty accurate, it's definitely accurate to the point of actionable, where it's defined, dropout is defined by did not re-enroll in another Colorado school. It might be lagging, it might be slow, but generally those numbers wash out pretty
Track of
clean.
kids, basically, you're saying, yeah.
And is there a student
What do
that
you mean
just
they
is?
wash out?
Because the state calculates that, so they're looking across the state. And when we have a student that left the district, they monitor what district they pop up in. That district is submitting paperwork, and then we calibrate our numbers together. Okay, they left here, they went here. It's a transfer, not a dropout.
Yeah.
When they don't pop up on any other district screen, that's what the state uses to calculate dropout. And so if they're just out.
They transfer out of state, that's considered.
It's still a records request from that district, whether it's in the state or out of the state. So as long as the records request was filed and then met, it's a transfer, not a dropout. So there might be a small number over time that just kind of disappeared and we don't know what the story is, but I would say the vast majority they left the system from our state or another one. And it does impact, that one really impacts enrollment. We are losing enrollment funding due to dropout. A pretty significant amount.
Okay.
And that goes back to the one slide that we got in somebody's presentation when we were presented with the information that said we had a 4% dropout rate.
Yeah, 4.9 is for 22.
But when it's reported to the public through CDE, it's much higher.
That's off the CDE site.
Right.
So it's 4.9 publicly reported, because that's the only way we get dropout, because it has to be a CDE calculate. We can't calculate that ourselves because we can't account for withdrawals and where they're going all the time.
So it's not higher, it's the same as what?
It's the same.
Julie, don't you remember we had the same question when that presentation was being made?
At the
That the
retreat.
number just didn't seem right because we were being reported, it was reported in public, and then what we were being presented here, it was so much lower.
Well, it's always weird that the graduation rate plus the dropout rate doesn't equal 100%.
Right.
That's just weird.
Yeah.
So,
Because you also have completion rates to throw in there too. So there's a graduation rate, 4, 5, 6, 7 year, plus a completion rate, 4, 5, 6, 7 year, completion rate being GED or some other form of certification. So you have lots of variables in there that go into that calculation.
So to your point, it's important, but maybe it's something that we don't put in one of these main things.
And to Mr. Gall's point, it's complicated.
I would say that of those, dropout is the least complicated. Because there's only one flavor of dropout.
Right.
They left
There's
and
lots
they
of
are not
graduation
popping up on
flavors.
anybody
Right.
else's radar.
Okay.
Okay, we've had a robust discussion on this. I thought by now we would be home. And we are still discussing this, and we still have some more things left. So how does the board want to proceed? Director Art wanted that to be included. Director Nelson made argument that let's keep it to the literacy, and if we do it to the literacy, it will trickle down here, and then tracking all this is complicated. It doesn't mean that there are so many other goals that we can also attach to this, then we are making it bigger and bigger and bigger. Not just the high school dropout and graduation rate, but math and several more other metrics that we can attach. So is the board comfortable leaving it as it is, or do you want to put that additional thing that was there in the original document, which was the high school dropout and graduation rate? So quickly, do we want to?
Because dropouts are clear cut, would you be open to saying a goal that's very clear on dropout rates and then letting graduation rates, because they're trickier, kind of figure themselves out? Would that be something you'd be open to as like a fifth goal?
the goal as written does not address graduation, which just graduation rates is kind of the tag along on that. So, yeah.
It is all about dropouts.
Well, yeah, and then with the result, the last sentence
With the
being
result
also
also.
being a significant increase in the 4, 5, 6 year graduation.
That's your if then statement. So I'm either way. If dropout is easy to measure and it accounts to funding and enrollment numbers, which I think we also think is important, I could see adding one more brief goal on dropout rates.
Okay, so what I would do is
And then
bring,
having it on the website, but not a formal approval or a formal, I'm open on that one too.
okay,
So I think that's, you haven't weighed in 3 out of 5. I don't know where you're at on it.
Oh,
I don't know, like if we're deciding this, I don't know whether to add it or.
well, like I said, I think focusing on 3 goals that we have is enough for me, and now we've got the 4th one with the safety too. There are so many things that we can attach in here, and then when is enough, okay? So keeping it uber specific to 3 doesn't mean that we are not going to be reporting on the math data or the minority group data or the graduation of the thing. So I'm good with keeping it as it is, and then I'm open to adopting it formally. I think making a statement from the board dais that this is what it is, I'm good with that. So bringing it out there, it brings a little bit more, putting the stake in the ground, so to
Would
speak.
it need to come as non-action first?
If we may want to follow
Because
that.
then that would provide the reason, I'm thinking maybe we would want it to, because then it would provide an opportunity for Mr. Gall to weigh in.
Okay.
And then,
Okay, so we'll go that direction. Next week it'll come as non-action on the thing with the document as presented by Director Nelson with the maybe I'll put it in the bottom, that optional for discussion at the board dais with the fourth one.
Fifth one.
The high school dropout and graduation rate. And then we can get some feedback.
There'll be 7 of us then.
We can get, feedback also from the administration at that time. By that time, maybe Ms. Acevedo and Mr. Gall will be here in person and we can have that discussion. Okay.
I'll just add really quick that at the bottom of this, it includes the board
Self-assessment. Can you
self-assessment,
put that
follow-up stuff. I don't think that should actually be in this document, but I know we didn't wanna just lose it, so going forward for non-action, I recommend we delete this portion of the document, and this can just be like
For us.
to know
Yeah.
we're gonna do it. I don't think we have to publicly post it anywhere. I mean, it's public now, so it just isn't
As
part of
long as the
SMART.
board is aware of it, I know that there will be a transition in November. Then it's up to the board at that time to figure out if they want to follow through on some of these things that came out of that self-assessment of this board. So,
Thanks for doing that work.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. So we'll remove this self-assessment. It'll be somewhere, I don't know where we are going to. Yeah, it'll be a standalone document somewhere. Moving on to the next item, a board operation manual. There was minor requests that were made last week. If you can pull the red line version.
It's on page 6 of 39.
And then a couple of things were changed out there. Page 6 of 39.
6 on the screen or 6 on the,
6 on the screen, 3 of the actual manual.
Yeah, if you go
read
down,
the actual manual.
just go down, yeah. Go down a little bit
It's at the
further.
bottom.
Okay,
There in blue.
so
And
the
it slips onto the next page too.
Yeah, it
right,
does.
okay. You can pull it down a little bit further, Melissa?
Just a little, because
Yeah, that's good.
It's in between the 2 pages.
There you go, perfect. So the new changes have been added in blue, and this was the paragraph that was added to provide clear guidance to the board as to what we need to do as far as requesting information from the superintendent and his staff. Okay?
Basically, what we said, superintendent and the appropriate chief, and then the chief can reach down to get what they need for whatever board member's requesting something.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with that?
Yeah, it's okay.
Just a punctuation note.
Okay.
I sent it to Melissa, you need to not have a period after the A, and you need to, you can end it with a semicolon instead of a period, and add the word or.
Okay.
So that's punctuation. I would also say, this should go that, I mean, this is for the board, this is for all of us, including you. And just,
Yep.
as long as we're all clear on that.
Yep, perfect. I mean, it's all of us going with the chiefs, and then if the chiefs designate us to go somewhere lower down, then it's up to the chiefs to.
Is it up to the chief or the superintendent?
The chief or the superintendent. We leave it up to is it written as the superintendent right now?
I think the practice or what was communicated previously was the chief could direct you to the next person down if they didn't have the
And
answer.
the expectation is the chief will keep the superintendent informed about it when that thing happens. So if we are going to Chief Dr. Comfort, now he's not an area superintendent. So Chief Comfort, then if he is going to direct you to somebody down the line in his department, the expectation is that you would keep the superintendent informed about it, that all of it is taking place. That I would expect that when a board member approaches a chief and asks a question, there is follow-up, and when executive cabinet meets, that you do mention it to the superintendent that Director Melpacum or Director Nelson or Director Art reached and asked this question, so to keep the superintendent in the loop. Okay? Okay, perfect. And then if you go to the one about the secretary, I don't know which page that is.
That was 6, I thought. I didn't have it up on my screen.
Yeah, there. So it says number 7, initiate timely response, and then we cut out the thing. And then also, Melissa, thank you, by the way, you followed up with that automatic reply, auto reply that goes to the community.
And an interesting follow-up is that through this last 6 months, I've had real difficulty in communicating with my own doctor's office. We have this discussion, right? And we come up with this idea, we'll send out a template. I send something off to the same doctor's office, and the very next day I get the template. We've received your email and someone will get back to you soon. It's like, how did that happen? It was very odd. So I thought it was really well done. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really well put together. So
And something that's going to come up in front of us is a email that we all got about a policy change. And so it'll take a little time to do some background information before we have a conversation. It's in an email that came to the board.
The one you answered today?
The one that I said I'd get back to her?
the
Yes.
one from Ms. Clausen,
Mhm.
that's what you're referring to.
But you responded,
I did respond.
Right. And so just that's
It came
the
in
key.
handy.
Yes.
Yeah.
This one should probably say initiate a timely response
Okay,
or
Can you make
initiate
the-
timely responses.
okay. Can you put a timely response out there? At the-
I'll put it in my notes to change it for next time.
Yep.
If I change it.
Perfect.
for-
And now at least we send a prompt response. And when can we get that going, Melissa? Like how soon can we get that auto reply going?
As soon as I have your collective.
Okay, well, maybe we wait until next week when the board formally adopts it and then you can make it actionable. But we will have something that immediately goes out to all the constituents that reach out to us. But then the expectation is that we will follow through and also provide that timely response from Secretary Bankus. Okay, are we good with that? That's the only changes that were made to that document. Okay, moving on to the last one, which was the other part of it. And this is where I was trying to gather some information and I put it under other because initially I was not sure if I had anything to present to the board when it was added to the board agenda because I reached out to Phoebe, I reached out to first counsel, Deb Menkins, and then she reached out to Phoebe and it's been working in progress and I have some updates. Today I talked to Glenn too, to get Glenn's perspective because Glenn has done all this work in the past. So can you pull that up, that resolution? Is that changed now? Did we make the changes? Okay, go to this. So the first one was no more than 5 days. We made it no more than 6 days because of the feedback that was provided by the board at that time. And then I removed building dedications, staff. Can you expand it a little bit or like make it a little bit bigger?
Retirements.
We removed the staff retirements out there. Perfect. And then what I put there is other meetings mandated by the board as the board representative. Okay, which reflects what your concern was if the board has to, you are the designated CAS-B representative and you need to attend a CAS-B meeting or whatever it is. And then other activities require prior board approval. That's the part of it. First, are we good with those? And then I can come to the para portion of it.
I would add the word and before other activities.
Okay, great. Add the and.
Oh, well, maybe not. Well,
I think the and goes.
but
It's
so-
a semicolon out there. At the
Right,
end
so
of
board
it.
members may only receive compensation, blah, 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 for days. Official board duties include attending, these activities, specifically negotiations, town hall meetings, commencement activities, and other meetings mandated by the board as the board representative. Other activities require board approval. Nope, never mind, it's fine.
Okay, perfect. So are we good with those changes so far up there?
Yes.
Okay, now let's move to the para questions and the questions that Director Art brought up and Director Bankus you brought up too. Okay, this is
What?
the how your retirement is going to get
Oh, yeah,
impacted.
yeah, yeah.
So And Phoebe is joining us. She can,
Hi Phoebe.
she can also, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay.
Hello.
Hi. So Phoebe, please listen in. And this is what I know from multiple conversations with legal counsel and Glenn earlier this morning. And my understanding is Phoebe is also trying to verify all this information through contacting PERA, the retirement company, directly. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so let me share what I have first. What Glenn told me and what legal counsel told me also is that the easiest way and the best way to address this is that we would be considered contract employees as contract workers who would get a 1099 form as opposed to being employees of the district. Okay, so we won't be employees of the district, it'll be more contract work. Okay, and what Glenn said is that under IRS rules, employees have to report to the employer, and we as board do not report to the district. Okay, we are more elected representatives of the community. So that was the justification he gave, that there is a strong case to be made that we are not employees of the district, that we are more contract workers because we don't report to the thing. So if it is 1099 and then we are contract workers, now there are two different categories out there. One, let me use myself as an example. I never contributed to the PERA system. I was never a PERA employee, okay? So for me, it would be a direct 1099 form, and whatever amount the district pays me, I would have to report it as income tax and go through that process. I would not have to contribute into the PERA system at all. For you who were a PERA employee before and you are a PERA retiree, you would have to contribute, the district would have to contribute the PERA system, which is 22% or whatever it is, or whatever money, and then you would have to contribute from that amount of money that you earn 11% into the thing. Even if you are a contract employee, okay, because you were a PERA retiree. I don't know if that impacts you also, Jason, because you are a PERA, you were contributed to the PERA before, and you are employed by a PERA employer now. So let's say hypothetically you make.
Okay, let's just go to a contract.
Yep.
So I'm a PERA recipient of a retirement plan.
Yep.
And if I'm a contracted employee, what's the impact?
So let's say for the month you make $600, okay? The district would have to pay 22% of that 22.
As a contractor?
Yes, for you, 22% of that 600, which would be about $120 to PERA, and your take home will be subtracted by 11%, okay, of that 600, okay? Which either your take home will be subtracted or they will subtract it from your retirement benefit, that amount.
Right.
So that'll be about $60 will be subtracted. That's my understanding of all of it.
Gotcha.
Okay?
So the short story is, if you are a PERA retiree, you still end up paying into PERA.
Yes, that's my.
But it doesn't affect your overall retirement.
Yeah, it doesn't affect your overall retirement.
Isn't that interesting?
If Phoebe?
We're done, that's enough.
Okay, Phoebe, did I get that right?
That is correct, sir, yes.
Okay. So that'll be about $60 will be something complicated enough for me. I'm glad that I got that right, and Phoebe can say that I got it right. If anything changes in that aspect between now and next week, when it comes as action, we will bring it up. So I think that covers your question too, Director. Is there anything that's left behind?
Well, I guess that would explain it to the extent required by law, so non-para people won't be impacted by that, and para people will.
Right.
And the district gets to pay an extra bit over and above the 150.
Yep.
Interesting.
That's my understanding of it. Okay,
Yeah, that is the downside. The district is indebted for that extra
Yeah,
20%.
yeah, which one impacts?
which happens with, that it is the part of
It's an
being
added
part of
cost.
that.
So I would be curious what the possible total impact would be when the 22% is figured, what the worst case scenario would be, because obviously the board will shift. Right now it might be 3, but then if it was all 7, there were employees, just
I
as
can't hear you. So if it was,
Okay, so
right now it might be 3 para people or former para people, but if it was all 7, so like 0 to 7, what would the financial range
it's easy to work out.
impact be?
It is, so right now,
Yes, but I think
if it is, and I can provide that answer for you right now.
Right this second?
Yes, I can provide
Okay.
that answer for you, okay? So if we do all 6 days, an employee, a board member avails of all 6 days in a month, that would be $900, okay? Spread out over 10 months, which is the time when the board is usually active, about 10 months, I'm thinking $9,000. This is going to be $9,000 for every board member when it's fully implemented and all 7 board members are in place, okay? 9,000, now let's go to that extreme extent, all 7 board members are para eligible and are in it. That's the extreme case that you're talking about. Take 22% of that $9,000, okay? That's going to be, okay, so right now 9,000 into 7 is going to be 63,000, and take 22% of it. It's going to be roughly about another 14,000. So 77,000. $77,000 would be the maximum impact, 77,000, if a board member, all 7 board members are para eligible, the impact for the district would be 78,000.
thanks for doing the math. That helps.
I think just one observation would be that we do work in June. So July it's really 11 months, I would say, but.
Well, we don't work in December. December, half a month is, there is
half a
only
month.
the thing, okay?
Yeah.
So.
We have CASB though,
You can.
CASB will bump that right
Okay,
up.
that's fine.
I
It's fine.
understand.
And
You're
we can
saying
go to the anomaly that, hey, in if the pandemic arrives, we work in July too, okay? Because in the.
Or hiring a superintendent.
Right, exactly. So we can look at all the extreme, the thing, I'm just coming up with a rough figure.
Yep.
If you want to make 9,000, 10,000, suit yourself, okay?
First of all, I am not, this will never
I know.
apply to me, so
Exactly.
don't say that to me.
What I would say to the board is, there was an interesting.
I don't think she was finished.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Okay, she can come back, but the only thing that I would add is go and look at the article that was there in the Gazette, which this Sunday, front page article out there, which talks about legislators who are getting like $35,000 out there, and you have Representative Stephanie Vigil out there who represents our district, advocating for that's not enough, and they work 110 days, and that expecting the working class community to contribute in this manner, it's not fair. That comes from our elected legislators themselves advocating for something. So we can go back and forth on this. We have discussed it quite a bit, but if we are a true district that says equity is a focus, we have several parents and community members out there that do not have the ability right now to participate. This is not going to make them rich, as the legislators and the article said. It's a stepping stone in the right direction, okay? And then compared to budget, which runs in even in the normal 500 million or whatever it is, if you take out all the ESSER money, we are talking about $75,000 that's set aside for something that will get the greater community to participate in future years. At some point in time, the board has to make that decision. It's a board decision. If the board is not comfortable, we can pull it out back.
Thank you. I understand all of that. My interest in a better estimate than just off the top of one's head and dismissing a month and a half is that we are as transparent as possible, and that there's greater understanding within not just the board, but with the greater community. And that was what I was gonna finish with this comment is it might be 77,000, it might be 90,000 by the time it's done, it might be 100. I just want that transparent number, that number out there for transparency. That's all.
Yeah, we can then,
Like maybe build out a document that kind of lays it out.
Well, even if we just have a number, the hardest, maximum number rather than the, this much. If every board member took that 6 payments, and it'll obviously be a couple of years out because the 3 of us aren't getting anything for 2 years, right? It's, I just wanna know what our maximum is, because that is something we will have to budget for. And
the easiest way to do that would be that 9,000, spread it out over 12 months and say, hey, we are going to work 12 months a year. That there are going to be times like when the pandemic is there, July is going to be a full working month, and that would be the maximum that would be there. But it's unrealistic that that's what is going to happen in a normal board sense. When you go and look at it, normally we don't work 12 months a
Maybe
year.
we have on this document a maximum and then what is a typical board working year number.
I don't even know if we need that. When we're budgeting, next year again, it won't matter, but we're gonna have to budget for it starting with a budget modification in January if people wanna take advantage of it, if it passes.
And I have been talking with Dr. Comfort about
Okay.
what that mechanism and everything will look
And you can figure that out, Dr. Comfort.
Yeah, absolutely, we can build models on any scenarios, but we can absolutely have the maximum number available.
And that's all I'm asking for, thank you, for when we vote for this, that we just have that up front. That's all I'm asking.
I think that's great.
Can you provide that number for us
Yes, sir.
next week?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other matter for consideration before we adjourn? Is there anything else on the board agenda?
I'm just gonna note, Melissa, is there a page 2 on this in your version?
Is there what?
Page 2, it's blank on here, so maybe we can swap that out.
Edit up to 1 page.
Do we
Well,
need
you can't,
signatures?
yeah, you need the signature page on there, that's
Yep.
what I'm looking for.
Yeah, my Adobe PDF is sometimes saving that way and I catch almost all of them. I missed this one. It's just only saving the first page sometimes. I don't know why.
It's fine.
Okay, anything else on other? That's all we have, and then next week is a regular board meeting, and then 2 weeks from now, we will look at the remaining 5 school USIPs at that time.
I did have something on the other item real quick. We had talked about the read receipts on like the Power School stuff. We talked about how like when we're giving CMAS data to our families, we talked about teaching experiences where here you go, little Johnny, give your parents your CMAS results in your backpack. Who knows if it blows down the street in the park? Is there a way? And we kind of looked at John at the night. He's not here right now, but I would like us to kind of keep a tab on that. We have all this data. We have all this technology, I should say. Is there a way for us, like we do our read receipts on our emails, where I can request that, hey, they saw that email. Can we do something like that with our important documents that we're sending home to kids through Power School, through, here's your STAR testing. Did your parent or guardian see your STAR testing? Do they know where you're at? Did they see your progress report, your report card? Here's the paper, yes, but we're also sending it via electronics with the read receipt request.
I don't know if we do anything via paper
I'm just
anymore.
saying, we have the technology, I know we do. And I think part of what we talked about with community engagement and our parent engagement, does every parent actually, are we doing everything we can to make sure that parents know where their kids are at every part of the school year?
So you would like us to task the superintendent to come back to us with some options on reporting systems?
Yes, and you'd rather me bring it up next week, I can put it on the radar this week.
Yeah.
I just think we've paid all this money for Power School, we have all this technology.
Can we just do thumbs right now and say, yep, I'm good with tasking the superintendent to do that?
Well, usually let that come at a board agenda meeting, future.
It's on your
agenda.
radar, does that make sense? Let's, we're talking about community engagement and parent involvement at a lot of our USIPs. I think letting our parents make sure they know where their kids are at, part of the parent pledge with the policy we passed, it's all right in line with that, of just, hey, our parents are gonna know where their kids are in their educational journey.
I love
Okay.
it, let's do it.
Next week.
Okay,
I won't be here for the work session on the 4th. I'll be remote if everything works out the way it's supposed to.
thank you for letting me know. You will be there next week
Oh,
at the
yeah.
board meeting?
It's just the first week of October.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, can you note that down so we give her
Yeah, I need to
a
Zoom
link,
in.
a Zoom, WebEx link? Okay, thank you. With that, we are officially adjourned at 8 p.m. Thank you.